Chapter 2260. 3 black ribbons fell toward the heaven-crushing glazed palace before wrapping themselves around Cyril, Chen, and the ancient dragon empress arms. The 3 heavenly suns also successfully established a connection with the heaven-crushing formation and became the core of the heaven-crushing operation. Here, even if Cyril fell, Chen would take his place. Even if Chen fell, the ancient dragon empress would take his place. The heaven-crushing plan wouldn't stop until all of the heavenly disciples were killed. The black and white spear had already pierced deeply into the heavenly Tao. It was clearly the time when the sun was shining brightly, but the sky had already turned dusky red. The blood rain started to fall, and a sorrowful and desolate atmosphere started to spread. No matter who it was, they all felt sorrow from the bottom of their hearts, as if their mother, who had given birth to them, was leaving. Chen's expression didn't change in the slightest as he slowly rose into the sky, passing over the dome of the heaven-breaking glazed palace. He lifted his leg and kicked towards the sky. Heaven-shattering second stance, kick of the heavenly Tao. He kicked at the sky as if he wanted to destroy the entire world. The giant golden foot began to appear, causing the crack in the sky to become even thicker. The powerful beings of the heaven-crushing sect stared enviously at the figure in the sky. The only ones who dared to compete with the heavenly Tao were those few heavenly suns. If Cyril and Chen were to unleash their full strength, they would soon be able to see just how terrifying their battle prowess would be. Speaking of which, the third heavenly prince, Unlin, was also unfathomable. It was unknown if he would come to the heaven-breaking glazed palace. With this in mind, the powerful beings of the heaven-crushing sect were filled with anticipation. Meanwhile, in the central region of the White Nectar Sea, tens of millions of heavenly human tribe powerful beings were on standby. Heavenly Goddess Wu Yin was responsible for commanding the entire heavenly human tribe army on the central front. The Heavenly Mirror God, Heavenly Goddess Lanya, Heavenly God Dark River, and Heavenly Liquid God stood at the 4 corners of the army, forming a combination spell formation that could combine all of their powers to unleash a combat prowess that far exceeded that of a heavenly god. The West Sea Sky vessel hovered silently in the air above the divine tree, blotting out the sky and the sun. It was enormous to the extreme, and it emanated a strategic might that belonged solely to the West Sea. These were the only remaining heavenly human tribe troops in this world. At the end of the battle, the weakest West Sea had become the most complete and powerful legion. Of course, this was based on the fact that their allies were basically wiped out. The once insufferably arrogant heavenly human tribe now only had a few tens of millions of soldiers left, struggling at death's door. They could be wiped out at any moment. How could they explain this? Yes, the situation had been completely reversed. They were no longer the ones who held the absolute upper hand. They were no longer the ones who could judge all living beings on the Tai Chu continent. Instead, they were the ones who could be eliminated at any moment. Under the powerful suppression of their enemies, they were like blades of grass that were swaying in the wind and rain. If it wasn't for those few supreme beings holding down the fort, they would have probably fallen into despair a long time ago. Heaven Splitter was already growing more and more intense. All of the heavenly human tribe powerful beings could sense the wrath and anguish of the heavens. Endless sorrow and anger welled up in their hearts. They really wanted to do something for Tian. However, the supreme heavenly God did not order them to do anything. They were like children who were frightened by a disaster and were hiding in a corner, shivering. In this situation, should he wait for an opportunity or wait for death? It wasn't just the celestial humans who had these doubts. Even the celestial gods didn't understand. However, right at this moment, a white streak of light suddenly appeared in the distant sky. It was extremely fast. The expressions of all the heavenly gods changed. Attention everyone! Attention everyone! An unknown power is approaching us. Enter a state of emergency. Heavenly Goddess Wu Yin held her people with her eyes tightly shut as her pleasant voice spread throughout the entire army. Her voice had only just fallen. The West Sea Sky Arc had already unleashed a cannon blast toward the white streak of light in the distance. A blue oceanic energy pillar tore through the heavens and pierced into the distance like an eternal river, within which was imbued a divine rank energy that was even more vast and boundless than the ocean. That's the West Sea Sky Arc's trump card, the Divine Sea Cannon. Some of the West Sea Heavenly Human Tribe powerful beings let loose cries of surprise upon seeing this. However, before the Heavenly Human Tribe powerful beings had a chance to recover from their shock, a golden blade projection imbued with specks of starlight sliced the river in half. This was a fairy so beautiful that it was almost unreal. She wielded a transparent and pure mirror sword as she positioned herself in front of the white-robed man. All of the Heavenly Human Tribe powerful beings fell into a state of shock upon seeing the face of the intruder. It's Enlil. It's over. The Heavenly Darkness God is coming. There were only one or two enemies, but the Heavenly Human Tribe powerful beings were plunged into a state of absolute horror. Some of the more cowardly Heavenly Human Tribe powerful beings were even trembling with fear. Enlin's name had already resounded throughout the entire Heavenly Human Tribe. No one on the entire Tai Chu continent could match his might toward the Heavenly Human Tribe and the paramount Heavenly Gods. That's right, he was the most terrifying enemy of the Heavenly Human Tribe. To the Heavenly Human Tribe, Enlil represented destruction and death. He was a demon king who had slaughtered countless heavenly gods and Heavenly Human Tribe powerful beings. The Heavenly Darkness God is coming. Everyone, fight! All of the great generals yelled in unison. The West Sea Sky Arc unleashed a relentless barrage of cannon blasts toward Enlil. The tens of millions of Heavenly Human Tribe powerful beings and several heavenly gods in front of the Divine Tree had combined their powers to form a massive Heavenly Human Tribe divine body. There were two dazzling divine halos on each of his wrists, one of which was a liquid divine halo, while the other was a mirror divine halo. Ultimate Heavenly Human Tribe combined formation, immortal heavenly being. Wu Yin strummed the strings of her pipa as a melody that resonated with the sound of the great Tao began to appear. The massive Heavenly Human Tribe powerful being over 1,000,000 feet tall also began to move along with the melody. This Heavenly Human Tribe powerful being was formed from tens of millions of Heavenly Human Tribe powerful beings, and it exuded an unimaginably terrifying aura. Heavenly God Technique, Flowing Slash. The immortal heavenly being stepped forward, and his body instantly teleported several hundred kilometers away. The entire white nectar sea was sliced in half by his movement as a purplish-red saber over 1,000 kilometers in length materialized in his hand, which he then slashed down toward Enlil. Enlil still didn't move. Instead, he continued to charge forward. The little fairy positioned herself in front of Enlil again before slashing her mirror sword toward the purplish-red saber. The mirror sword was extremely tiny and insignificant in the face of the massive saber, but a semi-transparent sword intent erupted from the mirror sword in that instant, slicing the massive saber in half. How could this be? Our saber was sliced apart just like that? The heavenly liquid god's expression shifted drastically. That's an attack comparable to that of a paramount heavenly god. Where did this fairy come from? Before the Heavenly Human Tribe powerful beings had a chance to react, Enlil and Tina had already reached the immortal heavenly being. Heavenly Goddess Wu Yin's reaction was the fastest among all the heavenly gods. She quickly plucked the pipa in her hand, and the immortal heavenly being's other hand clenched into a fist before crashing down toward Enlil and Tina. This fist was like a meteorite crashing into a planet, and it was extremely terrifying. Meanwhile, Tina unleashed an ordinary sword strike. She slashed her sword through the air. The semi-transparent mirror rippled past the immortal heavenly being's fist before flashing past its body. In the next instant, a neat cut appeared on the immortal heavenly being's body. The massive immortal heavenly human had been sliced in half by the fairy's sword strike. Chapter 2261. Tina wielded the meter mirror sword, yet she was able to slice the immortal celestial being in half with ease. Her invincible battle prowess left countless heavenly human tribe cultivators in shock. The heavenly darkness god was already terrifying enough, but what was up with this fairy? Was a pendant of the heavenly darkness god already this terrifying? Right at this moment, the West Sea Sky arc in the sky continued to rumble. One destructive cannon blast after another hurtled toward Enlin and Tina. Don't give up. Hold on. Let's beat back the Demon King. The enraged roar of the heavenly human tribe great general erupted throughout heaven and earth. At this moment, all of the heavenly human tribe powerful beings injected their power into the West Sea Sky arc or the immortal heavenly beings' spell formation with all their might. However, the cannons of the West Sea heavenly arc and the attacks of the celestial immortal celestial being were unable to harm Enlin in the slightest. All of their attacks were blocked by Tina's absolute combat prowess. Enlin didn't even have to attack to get past the defenses of the immortal heavenly being and the West Sea Sky Arkansas. He finally pulled out his evil slaying sword before slashing it toward the distance. A black sword intent instantly obscured the entire sky. The dense divine light of the divine tree instantly dimmed because of the energy of the sword slash. Then, it started to rot. Finally, the entire divine tree was cut in half by the sword slash. The tree that symbolized the hope and life of the heavenly human tribe had fallen again. Enlin stood on the spot with his sword in hand, and he looked up at the falling divine tree with a calm expression. Come out, ocean, sky, life. I've come to your doorstep, yet you still don't have the guts to accept my challenge. Enlin's domineering words reverberated throughout heaven and earth. He was challenging 3 paramount heavenly gods on his own. Only Enlin could do something like this. Rumble white mist enshrouded the entire sky within a radius of over 5,000 kilometers. An incomparably huge head began to appear, looking down at the tiny figure from high above. Heavenly darkness god. I didn't come looking for you, but you came looking for me? Do you want to commit suicide? The heavenly heaven god's voice was filled with the might of the heavenly Tao, and the entire heavens began to rumble. Enlin's expression was calm as he looked up into the sky and smiled. Cut the crap. All of you come at me together. I want to fight all 3 of you alone. Asterisk hiss, asterisk all the heavenly humans sucked in a breath of cold air. Fight against 3 paramount heavenly gods? How domineering were these words? Although it was hard to imagine. However, they also knew that Enlin was indeed qualified to say such words. Arrogant. The heavenly heaven god let loose an enraged roar as 9 levels of the heavens suddenly fell from the sky, each of which was imbued with the paramount power of the heavenly gods. There was the void of hell that contained countless tortures, the void of the 5 elements that contained the power of the 5 elements, the void of the demon domain that contained countless ghosts and monsters. The 9 heavens were all different, and each of them could instantly crush a heavenly god stage powerhouse to death. The 9 levels of the heavens fell at the same time, and their combined power reached an even higher level. Enlin laughed heartily in the face of the heavenly sea god's attack. Instead of retreating, his body shot forth into the sky like a black streak of light. A black light burst forth from the evil-slaying sword in his hand as he slashed it toward the sky. At the same time, the projection of a mysterious divine monarch appeared behind him, and it also wielded a black longsword as it slashed toward the 9 levels of the heavens. A peerlessly domineering sword projection instantly pierced through the entire sky. This was not an exaggeration. There really was no end to this black sword projection. Furthermore, it had sliced the falling sky in half in the blink of an eye, as if a bottomless abyss had appeared. The sword projection then continued upward, engulfing the 2nd level of the heavens from the middle. In the eyes of ordinary experts, the sky was terrifying to the extreme. However, this sword slash was like a hot knife through butter, quickly breaking it apart. The 9 levels of the heavens were shattered, and the heavenly heaven god's blood-curdling wail erupted from the sky. So what if it's the 9 heavens? It's just one sword strike. After wounding the heavenly heaven god with a single sword strike, Unlin shook off the darkness on his sword as a proud expression appeared on his face. He had come here to slay a heavenly god. Furthermore, he wasn't going to slay an ordinary heavenly god. He was going to turn this paramount heavenly god into nourishment for his divine Tao of darkness. Only then would he have the confidence to deal with the heavenly light goddess. Die. Unlin was just about to kill the heavenly heaven god with a single sword strike. Right at this moment, his heart jolted, and he immediately slashed his sword toward another direction. A peculiar ripple appeared in the air. The heavenly sea god suddenly appeared from the ripple with his golden trident before stabbing it toward Unlin's waist. However, Unlin's reaction was far too fast. The golden trident clashed with Unlin's evil-slaying sword, upon which a sharp screeching sound erupted. Boundless sword intent imbued with the extremely pure divine Tao of darkness transformed into explosive energy in that instant, which blasted the heavenly sea god flying. Ding-ling-ling, the crisp sound of a wind chime sounded. For some reason, it was imbued with the freshness and joy of life. Unlin shuddered, as if all the dirt and grime on his body had been cleansed by a clear spring. He was struck by a peculiar sense of comfort. This was the heartfelt joy and love of life. Just as he was basking in this comfortable feeling, an embroidery needle, which was glowing with a dazzling divine light, had already appeared before stabbing toward the back of Unlin's head. Her flawless fingers gripped the embroidery needle tightly, and her colorful dress fluttered in the wind. However, the most chilling killing intent was concealed beneath the atmosphere of blessings and blessings of life. The timing was perfect. Success. A hint of smugness appeared on the goddess of life's face upon seeing that Unlin still hadn't made a move. The embroidery needle was a top-notch assassination weapon, and its speed could be said to be the pinnacle of all paramount heavenly gods. Unlin definitely wouldn't be able to evade even if he hadn't even started. However, in the next instant, astonishment appeared in her eyes, and her lips gaped open. The embroidery needle trembled violently in the instant that it stabbed into the back of Unlin's head, and it was completely unable to advance any further. How could Unlin's head be so hard? Even the embroidery needle, which could easily pierce through divine tools, was unable to pierce through his head? Unlin twisted his neck from side to side before turning his back to the heavenly life goddess. The Tao integration intermediate stage heavenly darkness god's body is not something that can be broken by such a weak attack. The heavenly life goddess expression shifted, and she immediately began to retreat in a frantic manner. The darkness around Unlin's body exploded again, forming a gargantuan ball of darkness that completely engulfed the heavenly life goddess's body. A second later, the ball of darkness disappeared. The heavenly life goddess fell from the sky with her body riddled with wounds. Her bright orange eyes were completely dim and devoid of light, as if she had been ravaged countless times. Heavenly life goddess! No. How could this be? In that instant, all 3 paramount heavenly gods, all of the heavenly human tribe powerful beings were dumbstruck. In their eyes, these were the most powerful paramount heavenly gods. These were the paramount heavenly gods that they viewed as their final pillar of support. Yet, in less than a minute, they had all been wounded by Unlin one slash after another? Chapter 2262. The heavenly heaven god's severed head regenerated, and it roared as it pressed its palms down toward Unlin, upon which boundless blue blades of the 2 realms fell like a heavenly net. Unlin unleashed a fist toward the sky. Bam! The void cracked in an instant. Countless blades that were powerful enough to slice through the 2 realms began to twist and warp. Then, there was the sound of shattering glass, and the blades were shattered into blue energy particles one after another, completely dissipating. What? The heavenly heaven god's eyes widened, and it didn't even have a chance to react before Unlin's fist crashed into its face, blasting a hole several hundred kilometers in radius into its face. Heavenly God Technique, Soul Annihilation Sea. The heavenly sea god suddenly appeared directly beneath Enlil before raising his golden trident toward the sky. An inky black sea suddenly appeared beneath Enlil before converging toward the center in the shape of a lotus flower. Hundreds of millions of ancient souls leaped out of the inky black sea before pouncing toward Enlil, as if they were trying to tear Enlil's consciousness into shreds. However, no matter what kind of dark souls they were, they all seemed to vanish into thin air the instant they came into contact with Enlil. No matter how many of them came, they all disappeared. These dark souls couldn't even touch Enlil's skin. How could this be? The heavenly sea god was astonished. At this moment, Enlil unleashed a foot downward. Foot of the heavenly Tao. The golden foot grew larger and larger in the heavenly sea god's field of vision. No matter how powerful the souls were, they were all reduced to nothingness by this foot. Even the Soul Annihilation Sea, which was imbued with the paramount power of the heavenly god, had its foot imprinted into a massive crater on the ground before it even landed. Boom! The Soul Annihilation Sea was crushed. The heavenly sea god was also crushed into the white nectar sea by the massive golden foot before crashing into the rocks at the bottom of the sea, upon which the entire seabed was crushed. Heavenly God Technique, Withering Flower. A woman in colorful clothes stepped lightly into the void. She turned around and flicked her sleeves. She was like a beautiful flower that bloomed. The power of life spread through the world, causing the space around Enlil to be instantly filled with strange purple flowers. Each flower petal was an image of Enlil's death. Boundless karma was acting on Enlil's body in a frenzy. It wanted Enlil to die that way, and the image on the flower was Enlil's inevitable future. You want to decide my future? Enlil sneered and tossed out a black ball. You can decide life and death, but I can decide your end. The hairs on the heavenly life goddess body stood on end. She immediately fled into the distance, disregarding everything else. However, the speed at which the black sphere exploded was even faster. In an instant, it devoured all the withered flowers in the surroundings. The power of karma, death, and life were all devoured. Darkness then enshrouded the heavenly life goddess body again. The heavenly life goddess was once again engulfed by Enlil's divine Tao of darkness. When the darkness dissipated, the woman fell to the ground with severe injuries. This time, her snowy white legs had been engulfed by Enlil's darkness, and blood splattered through the air. Enlil stood silently in midair with evil slaying in his hand. He shook his head at the sight of the three paramount heavenly gods. That's it. The man's robe was as white as snow, and evil slaying was as dark as ink. In the eyes of the tens of millions of heavenly human tribe powerful beings, he was no longer just dazzling. Instead, he was piercing to the point that none of the heavenly human tribe powerful beings dared to look directly at him. He had perfectly suppressed three paramount heavenly gods with 3 strikes. What kind of combat prowess was this? They were all paramount heavenly gods, so why was there such a huge disparity between them? A few earth-shattering booms erupted. The West Sea Heavenly Ark's cannons fired toward Enlil again. A fairy suddenly appeared and positioned herself in front of Enlil before slicing through the cannons with her sword. As long as she was here, no one would be able to disturb her giant Enlil's flexing. At this moment, the gargantuan head in the sky looked down into the ocean. The heavenly sea god looked up into the sky from the bottom of the ocean. The plummeting heavenly life goddess opened her eyes with difficulty. The 3 paramount heavenly gods looked at one another, and countless consciousnesses and thoughts clashed as they exchanged ideas. Enlil's power is far too terrifying. Even if we combine our powers, we won't be able to inflict any substantial damage on Enlil. Not only that, but if things continue like this, we could perish at any moment. Damn it! We were clearly considering whether we should watch from the sidelines or attack the heaven-crushing sect. Why is it Enlil surrounding the 3 of us now? Could it be that we have to use the 3-phase true heavenly reincarnation formation on him? Do we have a second choice? Just as the three paramount heavenly gods were still conversing with one another, the demon in the sky above sprang into action again before pouncing toward the plummeting heavenly life goddess. Damn it! Do I have a vendetta against him? Why is he always targeting me? The heavenly life goddess was feeling very aggrieved. Enlil only used punches and kicks against Tian Hai, but he always used his divine Tao of darkness against her. Why was he treating her so differently? Enlil was doing this on purpose. Enlil felt like the heavenly life goddess had yet to reveal her true Tao form, so he naturally had to force her to reveal her trump card first. Otherwise, Enlil would be very uneasy. I can't wait any longer. The heavenly life goddess body trembled as she looked at the oncoming Enlil, and she almost screamed, "Activate the three-phase true heavenly reincarnation formation right here." Whoosh! All of a sudden, the sky, the ocean, and the space congealed. In that instant, it was as if heaven and earth had frozen in time, and it was undergoing some kind of transformation. Within the purple star ruins, the black and white spear had already pierced a third of its way into the rift in the sky. Heaven-crushing technique, fist of the heavenly Tao. Chen launched an almighty fist into the sky. Boundless golden fist projections spread throughout the entire heavens, twisting and warping the entire sky. The entire sky began to tremor violently from his fist projection. Perhaps due to the compression, black energy began to slowly flow out of the rift in the heavenly Tao like ink before falling to the ground below. This black ink was imbued with extremely terrifying energy, and as it fell to the ground, it was able to easily puncture a series of bottomless holes. Are the 9 heavenly Tao tribulations finally coming? A hint of seriousness finally appeared in Chen's calm eyes as he looked up at the boundless black ink in the sky. If they wanted to crush the heavens would also choose to resist, choose to retaliate, and choose to eliminate all harmful threats. This was exactly what had happened when the purple star's heaven-crushing technique was unleashed. However, this situation was different from the purple star's heaven-crushing technique. They were facing 9 different types of heavenly Tao backlash by using this method. If they wanted to successfully crush the heavens and create the heavenly Tao, they would have to completely withstand these heavenly Tao tribulations. Chapter 2263. Each of the heavenly Tao's 9 tribulations was extremely terrifying. This was the black rain tribulation of the heavenly Tao's 9 tribulations. Countless droplets of ink-like energy fell from the sky and landed on the ground, riddling the earth with holes. The heaven-crushing glazed palace had a defensive barrier that could block the rain from falling. The black rain continued to strike the black and white spear in the sky. Cyril was still gripping the spear tightly, but his hands were trembling slightly. It was clear that his situation wasn't simple. Chen stood in the sky, bathed in the black rain. The terrifyingly penetrating raindrops landed on his black hair and on his delicate face. Just like ordinary raindrops, they slid down his skin as obediently as a child. He reached out and caught the black rain. This black rain is born from the heavens and falls to the earth. The process in between is like a never-ending Tao. The heavens don't know when it begins, the Tao doesn't know when it begins, the rain doesn't know when it ends, the Tao doesn't know when it ends. Chen sighed in his heart as he looked at the raindrops before him. If he couldn't resolve the black rain tribulation, this tribulation would probably continue. Every drop of rain was a Tao between heaven and earth. How could Tao ever end? Chen knew that the black and white heaven-crushing spear would be affected by the black rain. The heaven-crushing formation, which was centered around the heaven-crushing glazed palace, would also be affected by the black rain. There was a limit to one's strength, but the Tao was limitless. The black rain would continue until the end of time. If Chen couldn't resolve this problem in a short period of time, then the heaven-crushing formation's grand plan would become much more difficult. He stared blankly at the black rain falling from the sky like a statue. All of the heaven-crushing sect's powerful beings within the heaven-crushing glazed palace started to worry. What is heavenly disciple Chen Chen doing? Why isn't he moving? There shouldn't be anything wrong, right? This rain was extremely lethal. Even though Chen Chen wasn't injured, that didn't mean he didn't need to use his energy to resist the rain. If he just stood there without moving, wouldn't he just be wasting his energy for nothing? Her snowy face floated out of the heaven-crushing glazed palace. She glanced at Chen Chen and stretched out her snow-white hands to catch the black rainwater. The black rainwater formed a stark contrast with her fair skin. Rain is born in the sky and falls on the ground. There are thousands of changes. Every drop of rain looks the same, but it is also unique. The snow-white jade hand gently raised, and the water droplets in the sky suddenly condensed into small snowflakes that danced in the sky. Chen Chen suddenly opened his eyes. Shui Yin raised her head and looked at Chen Chen. Her pure and ice-cold blue eyes were filled with a rare warmth. Chen Chen looked at Shui Yin and smiled faintly. They are unique and eternal. Since that's the case, I should cherish them. Black rainwater continued to seep out of the cracks in the sky. The world was a strange rainy scene. Black rain filled the sky and extended endlessly. A white halo suddenly surged out of Chen Chen's body and expanded outwards. Regardless of whether it was the black rain or the space, they were all absorbed and disappeared the moment they entered the halo. It was as if they had fallen into another dimension. Shui Yan's beautiful eyes flickered as she softly said, "A spotless land." The spotless land was Chen Chen's absolute domain, and it was the projection of his inner universe. A life could be a universe, a cell could be a universe, and even a speck of dust could be a universe. There was no difference between high and low, and there was no difference between great and small. A spectator was just as great as a macroscopic view. This was what Chen Chen had told her before. A spotless land was an environment of absolute balance. It was a world where all things and all Daos were in absolute balance. At this moment, the white halo started to expand, expand, and engulf everything that the naked eye could see. Everything that was engulfed by the white halo disappeared. They had all entered Chen Chen's strange dimension. The black rain in the sky was originally still falling stubbornly. However, after the process of the rain was completely interrupted, it was as if a perfect and harmonious cycle had been forcefully interrupted. Life walked towards death, reincarnation was interrupted, and Tao was also terminated. After a faintly discernible whimper, the black ink in the crack suddenly disappeared. Look, the black rain in the sky has disappeared. Did Heavenly Sun Chen Chen do this? What's that white halo of light? It looks so powerful! The heaven-crushing sex elites all exclaimed in surprise. In their eyes, they only saw Chen Chen release a halo of light, which then sucked away all the black rain in the sky. Everything had happened too quickly and too calmly. They had no idea what kind of thrilling confrontation Chen Chen had just had with the heavenly Tao. However, before Chen Chen could even heave a sigh of relief, the explosion in the sky made him tense up again. He saw a bloody, skinless god-fiend's head appear in front of the fissure, and it was only connected by flesh and blood. It cracked open its mouth and laughed soundlessly at Chen Chen. An extremely terrifying aura instantly spread throughout heaven and earth. All of the heaven-crushing glazed palace's elites were so shocked that they found it difficult to even breathe. They could only stare blankly at the scene unfolding before their eyes. Chen Chen's expression darkened slightly. The second tribulation of the heavenly Tao's 9 tribulations, the blood tribulation. The bloody head in the sky slowly descended, becoming larger and larger in Chen Chen's field of vision. The head was still laughing, and as its facial muscles twitched, bright red blood flowed down from the wrinkles on its face like a towel being wrung out. The entire heaven and earth was filled with a terrifying aura. Chen Chen's mind wasn't affected by this terrifying aura. He looked at the increasingly distorted head in silence. He didn't make a sound, and his body didn't move in the slightest. However, Shui Yin couldn't take it anymore. She discovered that even though she had a cold personality, She couldn't suppress the fear and uneasiness in her heart as the head came closer and closer. Die, die, die! She suddenly waved an arm, and countless snow-white blades of ice formed a massive azure frost dragon that soared into the sky, roaring as it pounced toward the head in the sky. The azure frost dragon's aura was extremely terrifying, and it crashed heavily into the head. However, it directly exploded like a bubble, and the energy transformed into white snowflakes that rained down from the sky. How is this possible? My full power attack was instantly disintegrated. An unconcealable expression of shock appeared on Shui Yan's exquisite and flawless face. Fear once again flooded her heart like a tidal wave. Escape, I must escape. Otherwise I'll die. This became the only thought in her mind. Chen Chen's expression instantly softened when he saw this. White snowflakes and dripping blood. This was clearly an extremely terrifying aura. However, he stretched out his arms. The snowflakes turn into white butterflies, and the tears and blood turn into red rhododendrons. I understand. You shouldn't be the embodiment of terror, and it's impossible for you to be the embodiment of terror. You represent pain and anger, so anyone who approaches you and tries to destroy you will be destroyed. Chen Chen took the initiative to fly toward the huge smiling face. Since that's the case, then let me bear all of your pain and anger. Chen Chen didn't hesitate. Under everyone's shocked gazes, he completely merged into the flesh, and his figure completely disappeared. Chapter 2264. Chen Chen. Shui Yan's fear instantly dissipated the instant Chen Chen entered the bloody head. She flew toward the head in the sky with all her might. However, she didn't even get a chance to attack the head. She discovered that the head's smiling face had turned into a crying face. Immediately afterward, the head became smaller and smaller, until it finally disappeared into the sky. The tense and terrifying atmosphere instantly disappeared. Only a delicate-looking young man was still standing quietly in his original spot. Cyril smiled as he looked at the frail but extremely reliable figure. The heaven-crushing sect is extremely fortunate to have you here. Chen Chen turned to Shui Yan and shook his head. Leave the rest to me. Go back, don't stay here. You'll distract me. Shui Yan's heart ached when she saw Chen Chen's pale complexion. She wanted to say something, but when she saw Chen Chen's resolute and unquestionable gaze, she swallowed her words in the end and silently returned to the interior of the heaven-shattering glazed palace. Chen Chen had broken through 2 of the heavenly Tao's 9 tribulations. Heaven and earth fell into a momentary silence. Everything seemed to have returned to normal. However, Chen Chen didn't need this kind of silence. Since the heavens didn't want to deal with him, then he would deal with the heavens instead. The heaven-crushing plan definitely couldn't fail. The youth in linen clothes slapped his palm toward the sky. An extremely huge golden palm appeared, as if it was going to smash the entire sky into smithereens. Heaven-crushing 4 techniques, palm of the heavenly Tao. Boom! The palm shattered the sky, and countless cracks expanded once again. The heavenly Tao started to loosen under the boundless and domineering palm energy. Right at this moment, the sky cracked open once again. This time, the one who appeared was an extremely gentle and compassionate woman dressed in white. The woman slowly descended from the sky. She looked at Chen Chen, Cyril, and every single member of the heaven-crushing sect. Her eyes were as clear as a lake. A unique emotion surfaced in the hearts of all living beings at this moment. At this moment, in the white nectar sea. The sea, sky, and space here had all changed. It was as if they had been fused together by some extremely terrifying power. The sea started to rise into the sky, and the sky started to fall into the sea. This wasn't a simple change of direction. Instead, the 2 sides started to fuse together. The sense of direction had already been lost. There was no longer a true sky and sea. Instead, it was a bizarre world formed by the fusion of blue and white. Anlin breathed lightly. He could even inhale a mixture of air and ocean at the same time. These changes in the environment were not the most important. When Enlin was about to punch the goddess of life, who had fallen into the sea, the goddess of life's body suddenly disappeared. Then, her body appeared in another place 100 miles away. This was a movement technique that was of a higher level than spatial skipping, and it was a type of consciousness movement technique. In her world, her body was wherever her consciousness was. If Enlin were to attack normally, he wouldn't even have a chance to touch the heavenly life god. Of course, Enlin didn't think that was all the other party had. Sure enough, the heavenly life goddess, the heavenly heaven god, and the heavenly sea god formed a tripartite formation as they unleashed their paramount powers. At the same time, an incomparably holy multidimensional formation constructed from lines of green, white, and blue appeared, instantly encompassing an area of hundreds of thousands of kilometers. Even the immortal celestial being and the Ark of the West Sea were within. The heavenly life goddess tossed an immeasurable flower toward a certain direction within the formation, and the immeasurable flower throbbed like a heart while exuding a peculiar light. At the same time, an unimaginably vast power of the heavens converged toward the immeasurable flower in a frenzy. The power of the heavens was comparable to the power of the heavens gathered by 10,000 heaven pioneer stage great generals. It was as if all of the power of the heavens on the Tai Chu continent had been gathered here, and just the fluctuations caused by the compression of the power of the heavens was enough to cause the entire dimension to collapse. Enlin was not going to wait for the heavenly life goddess and the others to slowly prepare themselves. He unleashed his divine Tao of darkness and unleashed his evil-slaying sword toward the heavenly life goddess in the air above him. Darkness instantly swelled explosively, engulfing everything around it in a frenzy. Power of the heavens? Engulfment. A mixture of sky and ocean? Engulfment. Space? Engulfment. Even the multidimensional formation constructed by the three paramount heavenly gods was devoured without exception. In the face of Enlin's darkness, there was nothing it couldn't engulf. Formation, reincarnation! The heavenly life goddess suddenly yelled. Her voice had only just fallen when her body was engulfed again. The heavenly sea god and the heavenly heaven god were also unable to evade in time, and both of them were completely engulfed by the expanding darkness. After the darkness receded, the three paramount heavenly gods had completely disappeared. However, in the next second, the eternal true intent of reincarnation filled heaven and earth. The power of the heavens erupted again. The multidimensional formation was activated again. The three paramount heavenly gods reappeared in their original positions, and they were completely unscathed. Furthermore, they looked up at Enlin with haughty expressions as terrifying auras erupted from their bodies. Even my darkness is unable to engulf the power of reincarnation? Enlin's brows furrowed slightly. At this moment, a mighty heavenly voice reverberated through the heavens again. What is reincarnation? That is eternal life. What are the three phases? Those are the three paramount manifestations of life in the sky, ocean, and the sea. What is the true heavens? That is the true and complete liberation of the heavenly gods. The heavenly life goddess made a series of hand seals with the immeasurable flower as her heart, the three-phase true heavenly reincarnation formation as her skeleton, and the purest power of the heavens as her flesh and blood. In the end, she transformed into a heavenly human tribe god over 1,000 feet tall with 10 holy white wings on her back. This heavenly human tribe god had no gender. It had blue eyes, long green hair, and flawless facial features. Extremely rich, milky white power of the heavens flowed over its pristine, white skin. What a beautiful masterpiece! The heavenly life goddess descended upon the heavenly human tribe god's heart before slowly fusing into it. Only her exquisitely beautiful face was revealed, and her expression was one of satisfaction and arrogance, as if she had found a home. His name is De, and he is the perfect representation of the heavenly Tao. It's a pity that the immeasurable flower has been damaged. Otherwise, he would have been even more perfect. Heavenly darkness God, your doomsday is upon you. You will pay the heaviest price for everything you've done. The heavenly life goddess voice trailed off. The heavenly heaven god fused into De's shoulder, and a pale human face was revealed. The heavenly sea god fused into De's other shoulder, and a blue human face was revealed as well. The three gods returned to their original positions, and the immeasurable heart began to beat. An extremely terrifying aura began to erupt, and even Enlin's heart skipped a beat. De spread his 10 wings and slowly flew toward Enlin. A faint smile appeared on his face. It was warm and compassionate, and it was holy and transcendent. Enlin gripped his evil-slaying sword tightly. De and the immortal celestial being were both heavenly human tribe cultivators. The immortal celestial being's body was countless times larger than De's, but the threat that De posed to Enlin was countless times greater. They were on completely different levels. Chapter 2265. Divine Technique, Sun-Concealing Immortal Strike. Tina clasped her hands together, and a sword of darkness descended from the sky, cleaving the immortal celestial being in half with a single strike. Hundreds of thousands of heavenly human tribe living beings were slain by that one strike. She was just about to land the killing blow when the West Sea Sky Ark's relentless cannon fire was already upon her. These cannon fire were extremely powerful, and even Tina was unable to ignore them. She could only continue to defend against the West Sea Sky Ark's attack. The West Sea Sky Ark's attacks were extremely ferocious, and it completely disregarded its energy reserves and the energy within its user's body. If things continued like this, it would be completely defenseless even if Tina didn't take the initiative to blow it up. Trying to stall for time? Tina was getting a little anxious. She looked at the confrontation between Enlin and De in the distance, and a sense of unease welled up in her heart. No, she had to fight that heavenly human with Enlin. De simply gave her too many unknowns. He was clearly a spirit materialized from a spell formation, but he gave off an ethereal and unfathomable feeling. Even Tina was struggling to see through him, so this was definitely an extremely dangerous being. Furthermore, De was still a complete life form in her eyes. As long as there was life, countless possibilities and miracles could be created. This also posed an extremely high risk for Enlin in battle. We have to finish this battle as soon as possible. Tina slapped a superpower of heaven cannon aside with a dark expression. The immortal being had completely recovered from his injuries, and he pounced toward Tina again. The immortal being was essentially immortal, so his regenerative abilities were simply out of this world. No matter how lethal his injuries were, he could recover in the shortest time possible. Just this characteristic alone made him far more powerful than the heavenly human tribe army's light god of war at the eastern heavenly gate. Hold her off. You have to hold her off. Help the paramount heavenly gods out. The heavenly human tribe powerful beings were clearly aware of Tina's intentions. As the immortal celestial being moved, countless heavenly runes imbued with extremely powerful sealing power erupted from his body, instantly enshrouding Tina's surroundings, unleashing a terrifying sealing power that was capable of freezing time and space. Tina's body faltered slightly. At this moment, the West Sea Sky Ark's cannons had already arrived. Before she could defend herself, an incomparably huge figure suddenly appeared in front of her. Countless cannons rained down on the figure. The man could only growl in pain, but he did not move a single step. You are. Tina's expression shifted slightly. Ha ha ha, I am a member of the God of Destruction team, Demon Lord Lingu. The huge figure was blasted into a bloody mess, but he was still laughing loudly. As soon as he finished speaking, a divine monkey enveloped in golden flames fell from the sky above the West Sea heavenly ship, causing the heavenly ship to shake violently. The heaven-crushing sex heavenly disciple candidate, the battling Buddha, has arrived. After the divine monkey finished speaking, it smashed the West Sea Sky ship ferociously, presenting its monkey fist gift pack. The might of each collision was comparable to the explosion of a hydrogen bomb. The most powerful holy angel, Michael, rushed over to Demon Lord Ling Gu and unleashed a healing light from his hands, quickly healing the flesh shield's battered body. The West Sea Sky ship did not give up on firing its cannons. It was still trying to blast Demon Lord Ling Gu to death. At this moment, a dark shadow suddenly appeared. Sharp black blades pierced through the cannons like the night sky, slicing through all of the cannons in the blink of an eye. A red wine gourd fell from the sky before crashing into the center of the West Sea Sky ship. The wine gourd was imbued with the power of trillions of tons, and it instantly pulverized the West Sea Sky ship's defensive barrier before making the West Sea Sky ship cave in. Demon Emperor Cu also sprang into action, and his attack was as quick as lightning. A divine sword materialized in Heaven Immortal's hand, and he was just about to slice Demon Lord Ling Gu to death when an even more terrifying golden sword suddenly tore through space in the distance. It was over 1,000,000 feet in length, and everything in its path was sliced open by its extreme sharpness. Upon closer inspection, one could see that this golden sword was imbued with a large number of heaven-crushing sect United Army living beings. There were over 50 million heaven-crushing sect United Army soldiers within it. 8th Symphony of Heaven and Earth Annihilation, Radiant Heaven Vanquishing Sword. This was the only mobile spell formation that the heavenly human tribe living beings could use. Unless there were special circumstances, there was no way to activate it. However, once it was activated, it would unleash devastating power. Whoosh! The massive radiant heaven-vanquishing sword pierced through Heaven Immortal's back and punctured his entire body. Heaven Immortal's movements faltered slightly as a result. For the Tai Chu continent. Charge! Kill all of the heavenly human tribe. Sect leader and Lin, we'll fight alongside you. All of the heaven-crushing sect United Army roared with fervor in their eyes. Tina didn't think that so many reinforcements would appear at once. She was quite surprised, but at the same time, a warm feeling welled up in her heart. At that moment, a blue stream of water flowed through the world, purifying and cleansing everything. The heavenly runes surrounding Tina were also melted into pure water. A beautiful and domineering mermaid appeared beside Tina with an earnest expression. Big Sister Tina, leave this to me. You go and help Big Boss and Lin. Xiaoni. Tina looked at the mermaid's determined expression, and she felt like her little daughter had finally grown up. She nodded with a smile. All right, I'll leave this to you. I'll go and help Giant and Lin. She flew toward Lin without even turning back as she spoke. This was her trust in her comrades. The West Sea Heavenly Ship and Heaven Immortal represented the highest level of combat prowess that the heavenly human tribe and the heavenly gods could unleash, but she trusted in Lan Xiaoni and the battling Buddha. She was willing to fight to the death with the heavenly human tribe, and there were countless living beings who were willing to fight to the death with the heavenly human tribe. She wasn't fighting alone. She had countless comrades. A warm feeling welled up in Tina's heart. Perhaps this was why Lin was willing to risk his life for the sake of the Tai Chu continent. The holy light heaven-vanquishing sword tore through the Heaven Immortal's chest and sliced through half of its body. However, the severed body was quickly healing, and a pair of arms also appeared on the Heaven Immortal's back, which gripped tightly onto the hilt of the sword in an attempt to pull it out. Hold on, brothers. This Heaven Immortal's regenerative abilities are absolutely insane. We can't afford to fight a protracted battle. We can't allow it to pull out its sword. The battle hero Martial Lord roared as he beat his war drum. All of the heaven-crushing sect living beings roared as well. The holy light heaven-vanquishing sword unleashed a blinding light from within the Heaven Immortal before striking the bodies of the heavenly human tribe living beings. The heavenly human tribe living beings felt as if they had been struck by countless arrows, and countless holes appeared on their bodies as they fell to the ground amid blood-curdling cries. The heavenly human tribe living beings were no pushovers, and they retaliated with a vengeance. The heavenly god rank powerful beings within the heaven-crushing sect unleashed their heavenly god techniques upon the heaven immortal's sword hilt, destroying many of the heaven-crushing sect living beings. The most brutal battle between the heaven-crushing sect and the heavenly human tribe united army had finally erupted. Chapter 2266. The Radiance Executioner Sword's explosive light energy clashed with the immortal celestial being's heavenly power. One heaven-crushing sect powerful being after another emerged from the radiant heaven-vanquishing sword. They flew toward the heavenly human tribe powerful beings who were getting into formation, unleashing a series of extremely powerful spell technique. The heavenly human tribe powerful beings brandished their weapons and charged toward the heaven-crushing sect powerful beings. Everyone was reinforcing each other with their formations as they charged at each other. Blood and death surged at this moment, forming a bloody and cruel meat grinder. The heavenly deities also took action. Their destructive power was extremely terrifying. The heavenly mirror god duplicated one Tao integration stage super mighty figure after another before engaging in battle with them. Heavenly god Dark River created a river of death that drowned a large number of heaven-crushing sect powerful beings. The river of death crashed into the radiant heaven executioner sword, causing it to tremble violently. Heavenly goddess Lanya wielded her icy blue dual swords and weaved through the crowd of experts at high speed. Wherever she passed, blood and flesh splattered and severed limbs flew. The scene was extremely bloody. The heavenly liquid god created a liquid enchantment barrier, and all living beings that attempted to pass through the liquid enchantment barrier would mysteriously be melted into a puddle of liquid. Due to the addition of the heavenly gods, the heaven-crushing sect's united army, which had initially been full of momentum, began to fall into a disadvantageous position. Even if the radiant heaven-punishing sword hadn't been drawn, the heaven-crushing sect's united army would still have been defeated in the end. However, the heaven-crushing sect united army was still charging toward the heavenly human tribe united army within the immortal celestial realm. What a bunch of lunatics! The heavenly mirror god looked at the heaven-crushing sect united army as it skillfully manipulated its sharp mirror to intercept and kill. They're just boorish fellows who aren't afraid of death. Given their level, the only outcome for them is for us to kill them all. Heavenly god Dark River waved a hand, and a river of death suddenly surged forth, engulfing two return-to-void stage white-wing mighty figures who were unable to evade in time. On a battlefield of this caliber, return-to-void stage mighty figures were nothing more than cannon fodder in the eyes of the heavenly gods. Blanche Mia. Gabriel's beautiful eyes widened when she saw her two disciples being swallowed by the river of death. Grief and anger instantly swallowed her reason. The holy flame exploded into a pillar of blood-red light that instantly tore apart Empyrean god Dark River's protective Dark River. Gabriel was a magic-type angel who was in charge of summoning souls and dealing damage. She was wielding her scorching holy sword and traversed over 50 kilometers to slash toward the extremely powerful Dark River god. The newcomer was very powerful. Heavenly god Dark River instantly activated all 8 of his divine halos, and he also extended a hand toward Gabriel. A vast underworld river surged forth from his palm, colliding with the scorching holy sword. Rumble! An earth-shattering collision erupted. The holy flames roared, and the river Styx released a low roar. It seemed like the might of the holy flame was extremely terrifying, and it even suppressed the Styx. But the river Styx was endless, and no matter how the holy flames pushed forward, they were unable to burn the river Styx. Finally, after Gabriel let out a muffled groan, his body was knocked back by the Styx and he vomited blood. Ha ha! Master and disciple love each other deeply? You want to avenge your disciple? Then I'll send you to hell to accompany your disciple. Die! A crazed expression appeared on the Dark River heavenly god's face as he gripped the air toward the retreating Gabriel with a sinister smile. The surging Dark River was like a black dragon opening its mouth as it pounced toward Gabriel's body. Was he going to die? Gabriel's pure blue eyes reflected the black river that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. However, in the next instant, a stalwart figure with a pair of black wings spread open suddenly appeared before her. Great Kiliakazam's soul ring. The man formed a seal with his hands, and a massive silver ring appeared. It quickly spun and blocked all of the Netherworld River, forming two boundless Netherworld rivers. Gabriel's pupils contracted, and her heart trembled. You are, ha ha ha, useless angels of the Lightwing clan, I am your daddy, the Darkwing Emperor. The Darkwing Emperor chortled with glee. Gabriel. The favorable impression she had of him instantly vanished. The Darkwing tribe and the Lightwing tribe were sworn enemies to begin with, and it was only because of Enlin that they were on the same side. In all honesty, Gabriel could understand why the Darkwing Emperor was cursing his allies even after saving them. Darkwing Emperor? The Dark River Heavenly God was extremely displeased that someone had interrupted his attack, and a cold smile appeared on his face. Isn't this the tribe that was beaten into seclusion by the Heavenly Human tribe several decades ago? What gives you the courage to face us? What gives me the courage to face you? The Darkwing Emperor maintained the great Kiliakazam's soul ring in his hand, but a faint smile appeared on his face. It's this. All of a sudden, an extremely profound burst of darkness appeared in his palm. All the Nether River that was charging towards him was instantly sucked into the pure darkness. What? The Dark River Heavenly God's expression shifted drastically, and before he had a chance to do anything, the darkness continued to advance. All of the Dark River that it came into contact with was completely engulfed by the darkness, leaving not even the tiniest bit of energy behind. This is the power of the Heavenly Darkness God. How do you possess the power of the Heavenly Darkness God? The Dark River Heavenly God turned pale with fright as he turned to flee. However, the darkness was even faster, and it completely wiped out the Dark River in the blink of an eye before tearing a massive hole into the Dark River Heavenly God's body. Do you see that? This is the difference between the Darkwing tribe and the Lightwing tribe. The Darkwing Emperor turned to Gabriel with a sinister smile. Gabriel was struggling to maintain her composure, and she ignored the Darkwing Emperor's smug and arrogant smile as she charged toward the severely wounded Dark River Heavenly God with her scorching holy sword. Don't steal my head. This honor belongs to the Heavenly Leader. The Darkwing Emperor was given a fright by the sight of Gabriel's attempt to land the killing blow, and he hurriedly gave chase before unleashing the power of darkness bestowed upon him by Enlin to engulf the Dark River Heavenly God. Crap! Dark River is in danger. The Heavenly Mirror God's expression shifted as it tried to help the Dark River Heavenly God. One had to understand that on this type of battlefield, every single heavenly deity was a pillar of support. They were extremely precious combat strength, and absolutely could not have any mishaps happen to them. However, just as it was about to spring into action, countless droplets of water suddenly appeared on the mirror around its body. It faltered initially before a sense of foreboding welled up in its heart. Heavenly God technique, crystal, boom. The Heavenly Mirror God suddenly exploded before it could finish its sentence. It plummeted toward the ground with the shattered mirror on its back, and it looked up with shock and horror at the graceful mermaid figure in the sky above. Be careful, everyone. Lan Xiaoni is here. Right at this moment, Lan Xiaoni had already pounced toward the Heavenly Mirror God. The Heavenly Liquid God unleashed one lethal stream of liquid after another in an attempt to puncture the mermaid. However, the mermaid's speed was extremely terrifying, and she evaded all of the liquid attacks with great agility. Lan Xiaoni, you're using the power of the Heavenly Sea God against us. You're a traitor. You will suffer the cruelest wrath of the heavens. The Heavenly Liquid God cursed as it attacked. Lan Xiaoni's body leaped through the air, evading one lethal attack after another. She flipped through the air, and her blue fish tail swept through the air in a perfect arc before crashing viciously into the Heavenly Mirror God's body. Boom! Gotcha! The heavenly mirror god's eyes widened, and its body caved in from the terrifying force of the fish tail as it continued to plummet. Chapter 2267. Heavenly Mirror God. The heavenly liquid god's expression shifted again upon seeing the heavenly mirror god being struck by Lan Xiaoni. It immediately unleashed one fluid attack after another, and it even unleashed an omnidirectional fluid attack that couldn't be evaded. The divine halo of water above Lan Xiaoni's head glowed with an extremely dazzling light as she swept her fishtail through the air, sweeping aside all of the heavenly liquid god's attacks. Right before the heavenly liquid god's astonished eyes, Anlin's body suddenly disappeared. Then, he suddenly reappeared from one of the water droplets behind the heavenly liquid god, and his long fishtail lashed out again. Smack! The void exploded. The heavenly liquid god was struck in the back, and its body twisted and contorted. The fishtail attack this time felt even more exaggerated than the palm of the heavenly Tao. It felt as if all the functions in its body were about to explode. Right at this moment, heavenly goddess Lan Yi let out a clear cry as she flew over. The icy blue sword in her hand slashed out a series of stunning sword slashes. Heavenly god technique, dance of water. Lan Xiaoni made a divine seal, and the surrounding heaven and earth instantly transformed into a translucent, bright blue space. She swam freely in the water space like a fish, twisting her incomparably graceful and delicate body, nimbly dodging the sword slashes. When heavenly goddess Lan Yi revealed a sliver of weakness, Lan Xiaoni suddenly disappeared into the water. When heavenly goddess Lan Yi detected Lan Xiaoni's location, she could only see her merciless fishtail. Smack! Heavenly goddess Lan Yi's beautiful face was flattened and twisted by the fishtail. Pooh! Heavenly goddess Lan Yi spat out a mouthful of blood as she was sent flying for dozens of miles. She was almost sent flying out of the immortal celestial being's great formation. Lan Xiaoni was still swimming through the air toward the heavenly mirror god, which had just regained its footing. The heavenly mirror god finally recalled the horror of being dominated by Lan Xiaoni. This time, its premonition of death was the strongest, even more so than when it was sealed by Lan Xiaoni last time. It knew that Lan Xiaoni had become more powerful again. Lan Xiaoni was like the queen of all the heavenly gods at this moment, and she was able to deal the most lethal blows to the heavenly gods with ease. Lan Xiaoni had single-handedly turned the tables on the heavenly human tribe united army. In another part of the battle, the West Sea heavenly ship, which was floating in the sky, fell with a rumbling sound. Demon Emperor Cu sat on his own bottle gourd, suppressing the West Sea sky ship as it descended. He drank large mouthfuls of wine and laughed heartily. His cultivation level had already reached the creation realm. Suddenly, a pitch-black hole appeared on the surface of the heavenly ark that his gourd was pressing down on. Devil Emperor Cu's expression changed, and he quickly moved to the side. However, the West Sea Sky vessel's attack was even faster. It completely surpassed the speed of light, and it instantly enveloped Demon Emperor Cu's gourd and body, forming an airtight dark blue sphere. Super-dimensional cage. This was the West Sea Sky ship's secret weapon. Once the enemy was hit, they would be pulled into a high-latitude death zone. The multidimensional energy there would instantly tear the enemy's body apart. Even if the enemy's physical body was extremely powerful and could withstand the dimensional tearing backlash, their body would forever be imprisoned in that foreign dimension. This kind of attack was specifically used to deal with top-notch experts who got too close to their skyship. It was their trump card in close-range attacks, and they only had 3 chances to fire. Clearly, Demon Emperor Cu was worth it. Demon Emperor Cu. The victorious fighting Buddha's expression changed when he saw his most powerful opponent being insta-killed. He immediately swung his staff toward the sphere in front of him. A violent collision ensued. The dark blue sphere didn't move a single inch, but a crack appeared on the golden cudgel. It's so hard. What is this thing? The victorious fighting Buddha's expression changed slightly. At this moment, a pitch-black hole also appeared beneath his feet. Not good. He immediately tried to escape. However, he ended up just like Demon Emperor Cu. He was instantly enveloped by a dark blue sphere, and his body and aura completely disappeared from this world. Retreat. Yun Menjing made a prompt decision and quickly opened up some distance between them. Mi Jialai unleashed his holy light escape technique, and he instantly appeared several hundred kilometers away. He didn't forget to unleash a few sword slashes toward the dark blue sphere, but he couldn't even break through the sphere's skin. Damn it! What kind of attack is this? Mi Jialai asked anxiously. It's something even more powerful than the spatial cage. I can sense it, but I can't help them. This should be an extremely powerful dimensional attack. Yun Menjing's expression was grave. What do we do? The bloody demon Lord Ling Gu asked nervously. The heavenly human tribe powerful beings controlling the West Sea Sky Arc opened fire again. Boom boom boom. Extremely terrifying and powerful attacks began to fall on the three top-notch experts, giving them no chance to fight back. The West Sea Sky Arc's attacks were all comparable to attacks from Paramount Heavenly God. Even though Yun Menjing, Mi Jialai, and Demon Lord Ling Gu were all powerful beings at the Dao integration pinnacle stage, it was still very difficult for them to take on such powerful beings, even with the power of the heaven-crushing formation. Even a god of creation would be suppressed by us. Who do you think you are? How dare you block the path of the West Sea Sky vessel? The heavenly human tribe great general chuckled coldly as he looked down at the three powerful beings who were being bombarded relentlessly. Demon Lord Ling Gu's head was blasted in half. Mi Jialai was in an even more miserable state. He was unable to evade in time, and his entire body was reduced to a bloody mess. Another one down. The heavenly human tribe great general smiled triumphantly. However, in the next instant, Mi Jialai's body reappeared from within the circular holy light. All of the cannons on the West Sea Sky Arc faltered slightly. Boom boom boom. The West Sea Sky Arc opened fire again. This time, Mi Jialai was facing twice as many cannon blasts as before. He had just been resurrected, and all he wanted to do was roar, "Holy F***CK." Only a few seconds later, his body was engulfed by cannon blasts again. Thankfully, he had the holy light immortal body, and he was resurrected a second later. The heavenly human tribe powerful beings controlling the West Sea Sky Arc were all dumbstruck. Was Mi Jialai not going to die? They were unwilling to give up, and they continued to unleash cannon blasts upon Mi Jialai, causing him to wail with anguish. Yun Menjing and Demon Lord Ling Gu were able to catch their breaths after the cannon blasts were dispersed. Mi Jialai's combat prowess isn't all that great, but he's pretty good at attracting cannon fire. A hint of elation appeared on Yun Menjing's face. Who would have thought that this senior would be even more tanky than me? Demon Lord Ling Gu rubbed the top half of his head, upon which his entire body was restored. Just as they were speaking, Mi Jialai was blasted into oblivion by the West Sea cannons again. Yun Menjing was rapidly analyzing the situation. Her beautiful eyes turned towards the two blue spheres, and she suddenly had an idea. Mi Jialai had been resurrected again. He had no choice but to charge toward the West Sea Sky Arc, and his voice reverberated throughout the entire world. Come on. Fire at me. Chapter 2268. Boom boom boom. The West Sea Sky vessel really fired at Michael. Dozens of energy cannons rained down on Mi Jialai like blue meteors. Each of the energy cannons carried the weight of the ocean, vast and deep, making them extremely difficult to block. Michael had to use all his strength to block a few energy cannons with his holy sword before he was engulfed by the remaining energy cannons. The void turned into a sea of energy, and Michael's screams of agony echoed. Yun Menjing pounced toward the West Sea Sky vessel at an extremely fast speed, leaving behind a tiny afterimage in the void. A large number of cannons rained down on her, but she was able to dodge them with her agile movement technique. Michael had already taken a lot of the cannons for her, so her dodging rate was extremely high. She was getting close. She saw the deep blue ball in front of her. Suddenly, darkness surged on her slender arms, and a dark shadow turned into a pair of giant hands that lifted the deep blue ball up. Buzz, buzz, buzz. There seemed to be some kind of extremely terrifying energy on the surface of the deep blue ball, and it was quickly corroding her shadow hands. The energy even traveled up her shadow hands and corroded her body. Ah! Yun Menjing screamed in pain. At this moment, the West Sea Sky vessel's cannons rained down on her again. This time, she had no way of dodging. Demon Sovereign Ling Gu! She suddenly yelled. A massive figure suddenly appeared in front of Yun Menjing. Boom, boom, boom. The cannons were all blocked by that figure. Blood splattered everywhere, and Demon Sovereign Ling Gu roared in pain. Although it was very painful, he still endured it. Yun Menjing finally used a secret technique to lift one of the deep blue balls and threw it in a certain direction. Palm of the Heavenly Tao. Go! Golden light erupted, and the deep blue ball was flung thousands of kilometers away like a meteorite. The marshals of the West Sea Sky vessel sneered when they saw this. The super-dimensional cage is extremely tough. Even a god of creation would find it difficult to break it. So what if you threw it further away? Not only will you not be able to prevent his death, you won't even be able to prolong his death. One of the marshals controlling the West Sea Sky vessel shook his head. They're just a bunch of trash who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. They know nothing about the power of the super-dimensional cage. Let's get rid of them quickly, a female marshal said calmly. But as soon as he finished speaking, shocking changes were taking place in the dark blue ball in the distance, shocking the entire West Sea Heavenly Vessel Heavenly Human tribe. The Dark Wing Emperor laughed heartily as he punched the dark blue sphere flying towards him. His fist exuded an extremely deep and pure darkness. The darkness twisted and devoured the surface of the sphere, finally breaking the boundary of the superdimension completely. Roar! I old son am back! The divine monkey, whose entire body was shrouded in golden flames and dripping with blood, tore the sphere apart from the inside. It finally saw the light of day again. All of the heavenly humans on the West Sea Heavenly Ark were dumbstruck. How could this be? This, ha ha ha. How pitiful. You're the ones who truly know nothing about the heavenly darkness God's power. Demon Lord Ling Gu laughed heartily. At this moment, Yun Menjing had already started moving the second ball. A dark blue circle suddenly appeared under her feet. You still want to move? Die. The great general of the heavenly human tribe laughed sinisterly. The final super-dimensional cage was activated. So what if the darkness could break through the superdimension? As long as they could kill the porters, the heavenly darkness God's power of darkness would be beyond their reach. The dark blue cage rose up, trying to trap Yun Menjing within it. Right at this moment, a golden longsword suddenly tore through the dark blue cage, sweeping up the entire world as if it were going to slice the heavenly Tao in half. Heaven-crushing technique, sword of the heavenly Tao. Demon Emperor Yu's enraged roar erupted into the heavens. The sword of the heavenly Tao was like a golden pillar of light that pierced through heaven and earth, slicing through everything in its path. Even the West Sea Heavenly Ark beneath its feet was left with a deep golden crack. All of the heavenly human tribe living beings within the West Sea Heavenly Tao wailed in anguish as the sword intent flowed through the crack, slicing countless heavenly human tribe living beings into countless pieces. Even the dark blue circle that was about to engulf Yun Menjing was sliced in half by the sword of the heavenly Tao before it even had a chance to unleash its power. Demon Emperor Yu had escaped through his own power. This was a nightmare for the heavenly human tribe living beings on the West Sea Heavenly Ark. After all, that was the West Sea Heavenly Ark's most powerful killing technique. For it to be destroyed by the enemy just like that was an extremely devastating blow to their morale. If even the superdimension cage could be destroyed, Then what else could stop Demon Emperor Cu? Demon Emperor Cu swung his drunken fists at the West Sea Heavenly Ark, causing all of the arrogant Heavenly Human Tribe great generals to turn deathly pale. Some of them vomited blood from their wounds, while others tried to retaliate in a panic. However, Demon Emperor Cu was not one to be trifled with. He endured the countless attacks and continued to smash the West Sea Heavenly Ark, as if he wanted to smash the West Sea Heavenly Ark into smithereens. Meanwhile, on the other side of the collapsed tree, Di's 10 wings were fully extended, and an unfathomable aura emanated from his body. His perfect heavenly human body gave off an extremely dreamy and surreal feeling. "You are my enemy, the heavenly darkness god, right?" De smiled gently. There was no emotion in his tone. It was as if he was narrating something. Enlin didn't waste any time with words, and his divine Tao of darkness began to spread outward like ink. The divine Tao of darkness reached De, and it suddenly bared its fangs. It transformed into a ferocious beast of darkness that pounced toward De. Splash! It was as if ink had spilled onto the man's body. The man's body was stained with darkness, but the darkness flowed down his smooth skin like liquid. It was unable to devour the man in front of him. De stroked the darkness in front of him with his slender hands, and a peaceful smile appeared on his face. "I am the most perfect celestial being, the one favored by the heavens. The Tao of darkness is also the heavenly Tao, so why would it harm a perfect living being like me?" Enlin's expression shifted slightly. He really did want to use darkness to devour the man in front of him. However, was his divine Tao of darkness completely ineffective against De? No, that was definitely not the case. If that was the case, the 3 paramount beings would not have been so cowardly. They would have dominated the Tai Chu continent a long time ago. There had to be some sort of weakness. Enlin's eyes narrowed. He silently activated his heavens extended technique at this moment. Almost instantly, De tore through all the attacks and defenses of darkness in front of him. He rushed toward Enlin and pushed his palm out lightly. At this moment, Enlin felt his divine Tao of darkness tremble violently. It was as if it had been struck by something extremely terrifying. Buzz! Invisible ripples spread out violently. Enlin's body trembled slightly under De's palm, and he retreated a few steps. It was clearly not an extremely powerful attack, but blood was already seeping out of the corner of his mouth. Chapter 2269. "Oh? You're able to withstand my palm strike?" De was a little surprised. He looked at Enlin with a hint of admiration. "You have to know that each of my attacks is at the level of the heavenly Tao. I can easily strike your Tao." Hearing this, Enlin finally understood where that strange feeling had come from. De wasn't bragging. That palm strike of his had really struck his god Tao of darkness. It was clearly an extremely ethereal Tao, but De was able to strike its source. What kind of cultivation base did one have to be able to do that? "Stop flexing. Hurry up and kill him," the heavenly sea god on De's left shoulder interjected and urged De. De furrowed his brows. "I would be perfect if you guys weren't here. You wouldn't even have the chance to flex if we didn't provide you with the power of the heavenly gods," the heavenly heaven god snapped. An apologetic expression appeared on the goddess of life's face. "I'm sorry. If it weren't for the fact that the immeasurable flower was damaged, he wouldn't be like this." De's expression darkened. "What did you say? Damaged?" "No, you're perfect. It's just that the immeasurable flower is damaged." "What does that have to do with you, De?" the heavenly life goddess corrected. De felt much better upon hearing this. At this moment, the darkness suddenly condensed into the shape of a sharp awl before stabbing toward his chest. The terrifying sharpness of the awl even tore the surrounding space into chaos. Whoosh! The awl of darkness collided with De's chest, and it suddenly exploded like ink before flowing down. "Do you really think I'll be injured just because you made the darkness sharp? How naive. As long as you're using the Tao of darkness, You won't be able to harm me. Di shook his head with a smile. He didn't look down on Enlin. Instead, he took everything for granted. He took a step forward and charged toward Enlin again before unleashing another palm strike. Enlin didn't want to take the attack head-on, so he immediately used his movement techniques to evade. His body moved even faster than lightning, and he almost instantly moved a few 100 kilometers away. Di's palm strike was very fast, but Enlin was even faster, and he finally managed to evade it. The heavenly human tribe Cultivator was a little taken aback. He looked up at Enlin, who was extremely far away. At this moment, a few bolts of purple-golden lightning tore through the air and struck Di's chest, shoulder, and heart. Enlin could clearly see that when the lightning exploded on Di's body, the energy from the explosion strangely dispersed into the surroundings like flowing water. It was completely unable to cause any damage to any part of his body. Enlin was shocked. He had purposely used a different Tao power attack, but it was still to no effect? Could he liquefy all the Tao energy and make it ineffective? How naive. Do you think our faces are our weaknesses? The heavenly life goddess seemed to have seen through Enlin's thoughts, and a mocking sneer appeared on her face. Don't waste your energy. Di is invincible, the heavenly sea god said smugly. Di patted his snow-white and bouncy body as if he wanted to dust off Enlin's attack. Then, he pointed a finger into the air. Suddenly, a terrifying power of heaven shot out from his finger. It was indescribably powerful. The white light instantly obscured heaven and earth, and the white pillar of light pierced through that tiny figure. Enlin wanted to evade, but his body was sealed by the omnipresent power of heaven and earth. The entire heaven and earth listened to Di's command and acted according to his will. At this moment, Di's pillar of heavenly power had already reached Enlin. Enlin immediately used his darkness to block it. Boom! The power of heaven exploded on the surface of Enlin's body. What made Enlin's scalp go numb was that Di's power of heaven also had the ability to melt Tao power. Although it wasn't as obvious, the darkness turned into an uncontrollable puddle of black water at a speed visible to the naked eye. Soon, the power of heaven completely melted Enlin's darkness barrier. Enlin's chest started to hurt. He felt as if he had been hit by a giant hammer. The boundless power of heaven roared and attacked him. His internal organs were torn apart by the power of heaven, and his body was thrown thousands of miles away. Sky, Di called out softly. His right shoulder suddenly lit up. He took a step forward and the space around him rippled. His body moved hundreds of miles in a single step, and in the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Enlin. Heavenly darkness god, you can die now. Di's fingers suddenly turned blood-red, and he grabbed Enlin's head. At this moment, Enlin felt that it wasn't his head that was about to be grabbed. Instead, it was his divine Tao of darkness that was about to be grabbed. A strong sense of impending doom surged in his heart. At the same time, the heaven and earth listened to Di's command and released a terrifying sealing power. At this moment, Enlin suddenly withdrew all the power into his body. A golden ring appeared behind him, and the power of the 5 elements, which was so pure that it reached the origin, blended together and released a brand new power. Crack! The sound of something breaking free rang out. Di's eyes narrowed. He continued to grab forward, but Enlin's head had already shifted to its original position. Di's attack missed. What greeted him was a fist with the terrifying power of the 5 element. The extreme origin energy and the extreme kinetic energy fused perfectly at this moment. It landed on Di's chest, causing it to cave in deeply. Bam! The shock wave distorted heaven and earth. Di's expression changed from shock to shock, and then from shock to shock. In the end, he spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body was sent flying hundreds of miles away like a cannonball. Enlin smiled faintly. He caught up with Di at an extremely fast speed, and his fist landed again. Boom! Boom! Every punch contained extreme power, enough to smash an entire continent into smithereens. Di's body was not weak. At the very least, it was at the level of a supreme heavenly god. After he recovered from his shock, he also clashed with Enlin's fist. Even though it was very difficult, it was not to the extent of being defeated so quickly. The two of them continued to exchange punches and palms, and the explosive energy was like a sun exploding. In an instant, the space of the sea, sky, and void was torn into pieces. Heaven and earth reappeared. As Enlin punched out, a carefree laugh could be heard. Ha ha! Isn't it just that you can melt and capture Tao power? Even if I don't use my Tao power to fight you, you still can't beat me. What are you trying to show off for? De struggled to withstand Enlin's torrential attacks. He did not expect Enlin to be so unreasonable, and he was a little stunned by the punches. Take this. 8 times Qilin arm, superstar, 5 elements fist. The fist in front of him suddenly struck out like a dragon and landed on Di's palm, breaking the bones in his palm. The fist force did not stop there, and it continued to crash into Di's body, causing him to fall into the white nectar sea. Boom! The white nectar sea exploded, and a huge mushroom cloud of steam appeared. Chapter 2270. Di had never thought that he would be beaten like this. This punch let him know what pain was and what power was. As the mushroom cloud rose into the air, the seabed also caved in from the impact. Di struggled to stand up from the caved in and flew into the sky. However, he was greeted by Enlin's relentless punches. Ocean! Di roared in rage, and the heavenly sea god's head on his shoulder glowed with a brilliant light. The entire white nectar sea was under his control, and his control was even more fearsome than the heavenly sea gods. He manipulated the ocean within a radius of over 100,000 kilometers to wear down the power of Enlin's fist. Enlin could sense that every time he threw a punch, the white nectar sea would materialize a fist of the sea to counter his punch. The vast power of the heavenly sea god was even more powerful than the heavenly sea gods. This was most likely one of the unique characteristics of the heavenly human tribe. They were able to better utilize the power of the heavenly gods. Enlin suddenly recalled that the heavenly light goddess had reincarnated into a life form, and Lan Xiaoni was a combination of a life form and a power of the heavenly gods. He was also a combination of a life form and a power of the heavenly gods, and this perfect heavenly human before him was also a combination of a life form and a power of the heavenly gods. Right at this moment, De successfully blocked Enlin's fists and charged out of the white nectar sea. Myriad ocean waves. He let loose an enraged roar, and his fists transformed into countless waves that enshrouded Enlin's entire body. Each and every one of his fists was imbued with the most powerful and boundless power of the paramount sea god. Enlin couldn't use the power of the heavenly gods, but he could. This was the difference between them. Good! Enlin laughed heartily, and his fists transformed into countless afterimages as he imitated Tang Wulin. Myriad nuclear warheads! Boom boom boom! Each and every one of his fists was like a nuclear explosion, and they were capable of vaporizing any seawater. Dazzling balls of light lit up heaven and earth again. To Di's horror, he discovered that his myriad ocean waves were suppressed by Enlin's myriad nuclear warheads. The boundless power of the ocean was shattered by Enlin's fists, and Enlin's fists smashed toward him mercilessly. Boom boom boom! Ah 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 ah! De and the 3 supreme heavenly gods cried out in pain. The 10 fingers were linked to the heart, so any damage De received would be reflected back to the 3 supreme heavenly gods. They could no longer be complacent. Previously, they had looked down on Enlin, but now they had turned into merciless punches. They had once again experienced the terror of Enlin. How can he be so strong? He clearly can't even use his Tao power. Damn it, why is he still so strong? De was about to go crazy. He felt helpless against the endless fists in front of him. When Enlin heard Di Yi's indignant roar, he felt a little emotional. This was all thanks to his good foundation. If it weren't for the fact that his cultivation base had reached the Tao integration intermediate stage, which had drastically enhanced all of the attributes of his divine body, how could he be so heaven-defying? Of course, while Enlin's heavy punches made Di Yi wet his pants in terror, he was also extremely exhausted. Since he couldn't use his Tao power, he could only rely on the strength of his physical body, the strength of his spirit, the power of the 5 elements, and his vital energy as well. This kind of high-intensity battle naturally consumed a terrifying amount of energy. Fortunately, he had money so he could take pills as he fought. Otherwise, he really wouldn't be able to hold on. There was another explosion. Di Yi's face was flattened, and his body was sent flying again. He suddenly reached out to slap Enlin's head. "I'm going to crush your Tao." Enlin smirked as he threw another punch. Bam! Di Yi's acceleration increased, and he was sent flying again. Enlin had already figured out Di Yi's abilities after this intense battle. Di Yi indeed had the ability to direct his attacks to the origin of Tao. However, this required direct physical contact. Enlin only needed to add an extremely concentrated power of the 5 elements to his fist, and Di Yi wouldn't be able to grasp his Tao. Di Yi couldn't directly attack Enlin's Tao, so the threat he posed to Enlin was greatly reduced. This was why he was constantly being suppressed by Enlin. Sky! Di Yi clenched his fist at Enlin, who was pouncing toward him. The surrounding void suddenly became 10,000 times more viscous. Enlin's movements suddenly paused. Di Yi punched out. Great Brahmic sacred ocean. Billions of Buddhas seemed to appear in the golden ocean. They used their unique methods to try and break through Enlin's 5 elements battle physique's defense. However, in the blink of an eye, that extremely powerful membrane started to distort and cave in. Enlin's body felt like it was being torn apart again. His divine Tao of darkness was also threatened. A cold glint flashed in his eyes, and the golden ring behind him suddenly spun 100 times faster. Massive amounts of 5 elemental fusion power instantly filled every inch of his flesh and every cell in his body, and an unprecedented and terrifying power erupted from it. Rip! The viscous void was torn apart. Enlin's speed suddenly skyrocketed to a level that made Di Yi's hair stand on end. His fist also landed on Di Yi at this moment. This wasn't a clash of fists. Instead, it was a fist against a chest, and a chest against a fist. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion erupted. The entire central region of the Tai Chu continent could see the golden Brahmic light and the 5 elements' energy colliding. It was as if 2 huge suns had collided, and an unprecedented wave of energy and light erupted. Massive waves over 1,000,000 feet tall surged over the white nectar sea. Both sides were enraged. Di Yi was determined to break through Enlin's 5 elements battle physique, while Enlin also wanted to test Di Yi's limit. Hence, both of them were using their trump cards. This was an epic clash, and the shock waves from the collision far exceeded the white nectar sea. The West Sea Heavenly Arc battlefield and the Immortal Heavenly Being battlefield were both severely affected by the shock waves, and they had no choice but to temporarily halt their battle to defend themselves. After a short while, the energy fluctuations quickly dissipated. In their place was a massive hole in the ocean, as well as a completely shattered space. Di Yi and Enlin both stood in the air, panting heavily. Di Yi's perfect body had been reduced to a crisp, and only a few pieces of flesh were attached to his chest, revealing his shattered bones and shattered internal organs. White blood flowed relentlessly from the gaping hole. The heavenly life goddess grimaced with pain. The heavenly sea god and heavenly heaven god's lips twitched with pain, but they gritted their teeth. Looking at you guys, I feel like I've killed 4 birds with 1 stone. Enlin grinned as he looked at Di Yi's 4 faces. All the supreme heavenly gods. Enlin had also been injured. His chest had caved in, but there was no gaping hole in it. His injuries didn't appear to be very severe, but his divine Tao of darkness had also been damaged. That's right, his essence had been injured. Thinking about it, it was still a bit of a waste to exchange his blood like this. Chapter 2271. Life. De extended his 10 wings, and the life goddess head near his heart glowed. A powerful life force erupted from within his body, and his physical body was restored to its original state in an extremely short time. TSK. What a loss! And Lin grimaced. The golden halo behind him spun, and his body was also recovering rapidly. His sunken chest returned to its original state. It was a pity that his darkness divine Tao was still damaged. This was why he felt like he had suffered a loss. The thought of exchanging injuries for injuries was silently eliminated from Enlin's mind. De was very powerful. He possessed the strongest divine body, and his overall combat strength was even stronger than the combined attacks of the 3 supreme beings. However, he was still slightly weaker than the transformed heavenly light goddess. However, his immunity to Tao power attacks and his ability to directly attack the origin Tao could make up for these shortcomings. With the sky as the restriction, the ocean as the attack, and life as the recovery, the pressure that Enlin faced was actually no less than the transformed heavenly light goddess. Do you see that? You can't kill me. De's injuries were all healed, and his expression gradually calmed down. His 10 wings glowed with the power of the heavens, and he looked at Enlin with a condescending expression. No matter how you hurt me, I can use the power of life to recover my physical body. However, what you hurt is the darkness divine Tao. If we continue this battle of attrition, your darkness divine Tao will eventually be broken down and return to the heavenly Tao. He suddenly spread his arms, and his body bathed in the light of the heavens. He looked holy and noble. Do you see that? Life is mine, the sky is mine, the ocean is mine, and the entire world is mine. Everything is helping me. How are you going to fight me? De raised his head, and his arrogance was about to burst through the sky. Enlin could feel De's pressure. It was very, very powerful. He was just thinking about how to break out of this situation when he suddenly sensed something. He smiled. The entire world is helping you? You have many helpers, but I also have external help. Come out. Goddess punishment. De's expression changed as soon as he finished speaking, and he quickly retreated. A streak of golden light appeared beside Enlin, turning into an extremely petite little elf with fluttering golden hair, but an extremely exquisite appearance. The newcomer was Tina. She did not make a move and merely smiled as she watched De retreat. In his hand was a blade that was so transparent that it looked like a mirror. It seemed transparent, but it also seemed to be able to reflect the entire world, encompassing everything in the world within the mirror. Sorry, Giant Enlin, I'm late. I just went back to the divine mirror world to retrieve my weapon, Tina said in a crisp voice. It's fine. I've just discovered some of the enemy's attribute. You've come at the right time, Enlin said as he transmitted all the information he had learned about the enemy to Tina using his divine sense. The corners of Tina's lips curled up slightly after she received this information. This trump card has a huge impact on you and the heavenly light goddess, but it doesn't really affect me, Enlin nodded lightly. This was also the main reason why he felt that Tina had come at the right time. As long as Tina didn't unleash the divine mirror world's heavenly Tao, she would be able to cause even more damage to De than him. Giant Enlin, let's wait a little longer. Tina suddenly transmitted her voice to Enlin. Wait a little longer? Wait for what? I have a few underlings who are almost done with their work in the divine mirror world. Understood. A mysterious smile gradually appeared on Enlin's face. At this moment, the supreme heavenly gods on De's body were already extremely excited. It's her. So it's her. She's the damned fairy who rescued Enlin. She's finally here. Let's take revenge together. The 3 supreme heavenly gods gritted their teeth in hatred at the sight of Tina. If Enlin hadn't been rescued, then they would have been able to force out Enlin's trump card and the light god's trump card. After that, they would have had a chance to settle this matter in one fell swoop. It was all because of this fairy who had appeared out of nowhere that their plans had been foiled. This god of creation spirit is not to be underestimated. We can deal with her first and seal the heavenly space realm. She seems to have a special ability that allows her to enter and exit another world at any time, the heavenly heaven god said. I don't need your guidance. Harumphed coldly as he flapped his 10 wings, sealing off the space within a radius of 5,000 kilometers. With the heavenly sky god sealing off the space, it would be 1,000 times more difficult for even a veteran god of creation to open up a passageway between two worlds. After doing all this, turned his vigilant gaze toward the fairy beside Enlin. When the little fairy had first appeared, he had indeed felt threatened. That was the aura of a powerful being. Even though the fairy had concealed her aura, that was not a reason for him to underestimate her. Looked at the little fairy with a serious expression. The little fairy stroked her chin as she observed with a serious expression. If the enemy doesn't move, I won't move. She likes to stall for time anyway. What a strange existence. I'm clearly the most perfect existence in the world, but when I face you, I actually feel an unknown threat. Crossed his arms in front of his chest, and his face was still filled with arrogance. You can't live just because of this. Alright, stop flexing. Hurry up and attack. The heavenly sea god urged. Still wanted to say something, but he was forced to swallow his words at the heavenly sea god's words. After a short pause. Humph. You don't have to tell me. I have my own plans. Harumphed coldly. That's right. We are having a battle here, so why is a monster like you interrupting? Tina snorted at the heavenly sea god. The heavenly sea god was enraged. He was a paramount heavenly god, but he was being called a monster? Before he could even get angry, had already bowed and was about to attack. However, Tina suddenly interjected, those heavenly gods are always nagging at you. Aren't you annoyed? Haven't you thought about castrating them? Dee's body faltered slightly. The 3 heavenly gods instantly exploded with rage. The heavenly sea god was enraged. Stop trying to drive a wedge between us. Don't you know that we are of one mind and will defend the same side until the day we die? The heavenly life goddess spoke in a solemn voice. Is the most perfect heavenly human that we have ever created. He is independent and intelligent, and there is no way he will be swayed by your lies. The heavenly heaven god was enraged. Go. Hurry up and tear that fairy's mouth apart. Didn't say anything at first, but when he heard the words of the heavenly gods, an impatient look appeared on his face. He said coldly, There's no need for you to say anything. I will do it myself. I hope that all of you can remain silent. Tina was overjoyed to see this, and was just about to continue. All of a sudden, an afterimage appeared in the air. Charged all the way to Tina. Chapter 2272. Used the power of the heavenly god to restrict the space with his left hand while his right hand turned into a scarlet claw. He grabbed at the petite fairy's body like 5 deadly blades. Tina didn't panic in the slightest in the face of this sudden attack. Tiny mirror-like barriers suddenly surged around her, isolating her from the restricted space around her. She then nimbly leaped into the air, evading the attack of the crimson claws at an extremely fast speed. As her petite figure turned, her sharp blade sliced through the air like water. It swept past Dee's arm and easily tore open a horizontal wound on his arm. Ah! You're courting death. Did not expect his opponent to break free from the power of the heavenly god so quickly and successfully counterattack. With a loud roar, the ocean liquid exploded from his body. The pure and vast power of the heavenly god of the sea spread out in all directions and sent Tina flying. Since you're so agile, I'll use a full-range attack if I can't hit you with a single attack. This was a shameless move, but it was very effective. DE had just sent Tina flying when he realized that transparent particles had suddenly appeared around the wound on his arm. They were devouring the essence of his flesh and rapidly multiplying in his flesh. What is this? DE was shocked. At this moment, a fist broke through the surging seawater and landed directly on his face. Fist of the Heavenly Tao. Boom! The strongest true meaning of heaven crushing erupted. Dee felt as if his entire body was about to be crushed by this fist. His handsome face was once again smashed into a distorted shape. Anlin's angry voice rang out. You can't hit me with a single attack, so you're bullying my little Na with a full-range attack. Are you a sore loser? Are you a sore loser? Anlin continued to punch after Dee's head started to bleed. Sky slash! Dee suddenly roared. A blue ring suddenly spread out from his neck. Everywhere it passed, even the space was sliced into extremely smooth cracks. Anlin's heart skipped a beat. He quickly crossed his arms in front of him and focused his 5 elemental power on his hand. However, the cutting power of the blue ring was extremely terrifying. It was actually able to slowly slice through his 5 elemental power. The tearing sound became sharper and sharper, as if it was about to break through the power of the 5 elements and cut Anlin's body in half. Just as Dee was about to finish off Anlin with a spurt of energy, the transparent particles on his injured arm flashed, and the figure of a fairy appeared. Transfer using matter as a medium? Dee's expression changed. At this moment, Tina's translucent longsword had already streaked through the air toward his neck. Dee's head had already been smashed open, but he was still able to lean back at the critical moment. The sword was not long, so he could still dodge it at this distance. All of a sudden, the translucent blade extended by 100,000 meters. Emperor E. You can't afford to play? Are you a sore loser? Rip! The sharpness of the blade was extremely terrifying, and it instantly sliced open Dee's neck, causing blood to spurt out. When Dee's head flew into the sky, Tina gave him a roundhouse kick that sent his head flying a few hundred miles before it exploded in midair. The headless emperor quickly retreated and screamed in pain. Ah! My head, my head! He was in so much pain that he used divine sense resonance to scream. The 3 supreme heavenly gods were also in excruciating pain, but they still tried to comfort Dee. You may have lost 1 head, but we still have 3. What are you afraid of? The heavenly sea god comforted him. Dee, I can also form your head. The heavenly heaven god yelled. F***ck off. Dee was enraged, and he felt even more uncomfortable. The goddess of life was the most reliable one, and her urgent voice calmed Dee down. Don't worry, Dee. With my heaven-defying regenerative abilities, I can help you regenerate your head as quickly as possible. As she spoke, green life force energy surged forth from her body. However, when the life force energy was reconstructing his flesh and bones, the transparent particles on his wounds suddenly unleashed an extremely powerful restrictive force. Not only did they prevent his body from regenerating, but they also absorbed the energy essence from his flesh and blood to rapidly multiply. What are these things? Dee's expression shifted drastically. The transparent particles on his arms and neck were most likely caused by that strange longsword. At this moment, Tina was already charging toward him with her longsword in hand. Ocean. Sky. Dee clenched his fists tightly, and the vast power of the ocean erupted from one hand while the vast power of the sky erupted from the other. He unleashed both attacks toward Tina. Tina could feel as if there was a boundless ocean and boundless sky crashing toward her. She didn't dare to underestimate her opponent, and she unleashed the divine mirror essence power within her body to strike forward. Their clash sent shockwaves rippling through heaven and earth once again. Dee was unable to completely tear through Tina's divine mirror essence power, but Tina was also unable to injure Dee. After all, DE was able to perfectly use his three paramount heavenly gods' powers, and he was also able to fuse with the boundless power of the heavens. It could be said that he was extremely invincible. The only advantage he had was that Tina had managed to injure him twice with her semi-transparent longsword. This sword was known as the Divine Mirror World Sword, and it could leave behind countless tiny divine mirror particles on the enemy's wounds. These divine mirror particles were the embodiment of the divine mirror world. They were like mirrors reflecting one another, and they could reproduce infinitely as long as they contained the enemy's flesh and blood. They were like extremely terrifying parasites that could constantly absorb the enemy's energy to reproduce. Furthermore, they were extremely tenacious and possessed a strength comparable to the divine mirror world's barrier. There was no way to get rid of them in a short time without using an extremely powerful ability. During this battle, DE discovered that his energy was depleting extremely quickly. Damn it! Who's going to get rid of these things for me? DE was extremely annoyed by these tiny particles. They were simply too disgusting. He couldn't get rid of them, but they were still sucking away at his energy like crazy. What was most disgusting was that after sucking away his energy, he discovered to his horror that the little fairy before him had become even more ferocious and powerful. "Cut off all that flesh and blood," the heavenly sea god suddenly said. "That's right, cut off your arm," the heavenly heaven god also suggested. DE was just about to send Tina flying with his void explosion fist when Enlin appeared behind DE once again. His fists rained down on DE like a flaming meteor. Boom, 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 boom. Aha! DE's body caved in and cracked as he was sent flying through the air. "You've become Xing Tian. How bad *SS is that? What's there to be unhappy about?" Enlin chortled with glee as his fists rained down mercilessly. 10,000 punches in a second. Chapter 2273. DE was mercilessly crushed by Enlin's fist again. He unleashed his heavenly wheel 8 slashes with great difficulty, and only then was he able to force Enlin back. Whoosh whoosh. DE severed his own right arm and neck. Those parts were where the divine mirror particles reproduced, so he decided to sever them all. He was feeling very aggrieved. He had already been slashed once, but he was forced to slash himself again. "Quick! Life!" DE yelled as the blood in his neck and arm dropped rapidly. The paramount power of life erupted from his body and quickly healed his arm and head, from his bones to his meridians, and then to his heavenly man body. However, right at this moment, a particle falling from the sky suddenly flashed. The little fairy suddenly appeared in front of DE. DE's pupils contracted, and he reacted extremely quickly. His left hand instantly transformed into a sky-shattering heavenly palm that swept toward the little fairy. If Tina didn't want to be injured, she would have to give up on attacking and defend herself. However, to DE's surprise, Tina unleashed her sword without any hesitation. The translucent longsword shot forth like a bolt of lightning toward the heavenly life god's head. The heavenly life god stared at it in horror as it mercilessly stabbed into DE's heart. Bam! Tina was sent flying by DE's sky-shattering heavenly palm. Her petite body looked like it was about to fall apart, but white blood also gushed forth from DE's chest. DE didn't give chase. Instead, he looked toward his own heart. A translucent particle had appeared where his heart was. This was a divine mirror particle that could absorb his flesh and blood. DE fell into deep thought as he looked at the heavenly life god's head. "DE, what are you looking at? This is a good opportunity. Hurry up and chase after that fairy," the heavenly heaven god urged. "I'm wondering if I should sever this part as well." DE pointed at his own heart. The heavenly life god, the heavenly sea god, and the heavenly heaven god drew a sharp intake of breath. The heavenly heaven god, has he gone insane? The heavenly sea god, pig head? There's no head. His head is gone, the heavenly life goddess said as she looked at the headless DE. At this moment, De reached out toward the heavenly life god's head. The heavenly life goddess really didn't think that she would be treated like a piece of rotten meat by De. As proud as she simply couldn't accept this kind of humiliation. It was precisely because De was a living being that such a problem occurred. Perhaps this was one of the drawbacks of the three-phase true heavenly reincarnation formation. Self-destruct, a voice suddenly sounded. It was said by a beautiful woman with a sword scar on her face. She had a look of despair on her face. That's right, it was the heavenly life god. De was stunned. Self-destruct? Self-destruct? I agree, the heavenly heaven god replied. Sigh. There's nothing we can do. This kid is a little retarded. The heavenly sea god heaved a resigned sigh. De blinked his eyes in confusion. What are you guys talking about? Self-detonation sequence activate, the heavenly life goddess suddenly instructed. At this moment, Unlin had already rushed behind De. He wanted to land the killing blow, but he suddenly discovered that De's body was rapidly expanding and glowing. An extremely terrifying energy was accumulating and exploding forth. Holy F***ck. Unlin roared in agony. No. De roared in pain. Boom. An earth-shattering explosion erupted. De had self-destructed. The terrifying explosion created a massive crater in a radius of 500 kilometers. Unlin was blasted, flying with blood gushing from his mouth. This was a mushroom cloud. It was a terrifying heavenly flame capable of destroying heaven and earth. Tina was just about to counterattack when she was blasted flying by the explosion again. Unlin was dumbstruck. Tina was also dumbstruck. What was going on? Why did he suddenly self-destruct? By the time the flames dissipated, the figures of the three utmost beings and the infinity flower appeared once more in the void, along with the essence of the heavenly energy that had shrunk into a sphere and was emanating an endless amount of terrifying heaven's might. The three paramount beings quickly got into formation, and the immeasurable flower began to pulsate with a sinister light. A dazzling light flashed past. A handsome heavenly human tribe living being with 10 white wings appeared before Unlin and Tina again. The sea and sky were on his shoulders, and the heavenly life god's face was on his heart. He looked like he had completely recovered. Self-destruct is instant recovery? Unlin took a deep breath. Not only that, but his cultivation base and power don't seem to have been weakened at all. Does he have an immortal body? That doesn't make sense. Tina also wore a grave expression. Right at this moment, the flawless heavenly human tribe living being shook his head with a confused expression. He turned toward Unlin and Tina, and his eyes gradually regained clarity. Heavenly darkness god, and you, are you my enemies? My name is De. Are you ready to die? The heavenly human tribe living being crossed his arms over his chest with a proud expression. De, you're not De anymore? Unlin blinked. The heavenly life god chuckled coldly. De doesn't know what's good for him, so I'll have to change to another one. Unlin. That's bad *SS. If this account doesn't work, should I just delete it and start over? As expected, the three paramount beings were the true rulers. Even though they didn't have control over their bodies, they could still kill the proud De in an instant if they were displeased. Cut the crap. Hurry up and kill that man and that fairy. The heavenly sea god yelled from his left shoulder. I'll do it even if you don't tell me. Shut up. De harumphed coldly. The heavenly sea god. Unlin. Bad *SS. This De was completely following in De's footsteps. Tina suddenly yelled, well said. Those three heads have been screwing around on your body and dictating your thoughts. Do you want to castrate them? The three paramount heavenly gods. Unlin. That's awesome, little Na. How familiar was this move? It looked like De was still the same De after deleting his account and starting over. Die. De let loose an enraged roar, and a dazzling light erupted from his 10 wings as he instantly appeared before the fairy. His fist transformed into a boundless ocean that exploded violently. Boom! The ocean exploded before their eyes. Both Enlin and Tina were blasted flying through the air. However, the two of them were no pushovers. Just as Tina was blasted flying, the essential power of the golden divine mirror enshrouded her body and overcame the power of the heavenly gods before flashing toward Air's side. "Be careful!" the heavenly heaven god roared with rage. Layers of spatial enchantment barriers appeared to block Tina's sword strike. However, on the other side, Enlin had already torn through the ocean in an extremely violent manner, and his fist fell like a meteorite. Chapter 2274. Air had just blocked Little Pixie's attack when Enlin's attack came towards him. He hurriedly used the power of the ocean to block it. However, Enlin's fist was not that easy to block. Very soon, the protective wall of the ocean was torn apart, and fist marks started to appear all over his body. Air spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body was pushed back continuously. History repeated itself. Air was ravaged by Enlin's fists again. Finally, he turned into a ball of fire and fell into the ocean under Enlin's 5-element Qilin fist. Both Enlin and Tina could take on Air on their own. When both of them attacked at the same time, Air had no chance of turning the tables. Cough, cough, cough. Air coughed out blood as he covered the fist marks on his body. He slowly flew to the same height as Enlin and Tina. His expression became very ugly, but his arrogance was still showing on his face. "Very good. You guys are very strong. You have the right to be my first opponent." Air crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at Enlin with admiration. The power of life was quickly healing Yi's body. Enlin did not continue his attack. Instead, he activated the Heaven's divination art. His eyes turned from black to pure white like a mirror. Every blade of grass, every tree, every particle, every strand of energy, time, space, life, karma, everything could not escape the gaze of the eyes. Enlin's eyes returned to normal when Air finished his pretentious speech. "Did you see anything?" Tina asked. "Our battle is still effective." Although Yi's strength did not decrease by much after turning into Air, the immeasurable flower at his heart is actually showing signs of weakening. As long as we keep killing it until the immeasurable flower wilts, we will be able to break out of this, Enlin said. "That's so troublesome. Can't we just destroy the immeasurable flower?" Tina tilted her head. Enlin was momentarily stunned. Then, he shook his head helplessly. "The immeasurable flower has limitless energy, and the body is immeasurable. Actually, hitting Air's body is the same as hitting the immeasurable flower." After hearing this, Tina nodded thoughtfully. Mysterious world domain. Air's 10 pairs of wings suddenly flapped in the air. Powerful spatial power enshrouded Enlin and Tina. In the blink of an eye, a dazzling and bizarre world appeared before their eyes. The earth was filled with smiling faces, the sky was filled with all kinds of colors and shapes, and the air was filled with an extremely charming smell. Countless heavenly human tribe creatures were frolicking around. They were running from the left side, and they would suddenly emerge from the ground. After taking 2 steps, they would fly into the sky, and after taking another step, their bodies would break in half. Then, they would continue to run. Some people laughed, and their eyeballs disappeared. Some people ran, and another head appeared on their head. Everything here was out of order. A small ball rolled away from Enlin and Tina. Enlin and Tina turned at the same time and attacked in the opposite direction of the small ball. Enlin launched a punch, and Tina unleashed her divine mirror world sword at the same time. Boom! The power of the 5 elements exploded. The bizarre world was shattered by Enlin's punch. Tina's sword was like a flowing stream, and it had already pierced through the perfect heavenly human's glabella before the sinister smile on its face had even faded. Rip, blood sprayed forth. Air's anguished wail rang out. Air didn't even get a chance to unleash his attack before Enlin and Tina seized the opportunity to strike first. The divine mirror world sword exploded its head. A bloody hole appeared in its head, and it hurtled back in retreat. As it did so, it unleashed its power of the heavens to restrict Enlin and Tina's movements. However, Tina and Enlin weren't going to give up on such a brilliant opportunity. The two of them continued to press their advantage. Enlin's 5 elemental fists struck flesh with his fists, while Tina's sword techniques were extraordinary and lethal. The two of them worked together to render Air completely helpless and unable to retaliate. The heavenly gods of the sea, sky, and life were also in excruciating pain. One had to realize that Air's head exploding was the same as their heads exploding. This was an extremely painful feeling, and there was no end to the attacks that followed. How could this fairy be so powerful? How could there be such a powerful god of creation on the Tai Chu continent? F***ck. Didn't our intel say that this was a fairy at the Return to Void pinnacle stage? All of the paramount heavenly gods experienced just how terrifying Tina's combat prowess was. They had initially planned to use the 3-phase true heavenly reincarnation formation to exhaust Enlin to death. This was their plan. After all, Air's overall combat prowess was unrivaled, and he had an ocean of energy reserves. He could easily exhaust 10 of Enlin to death, let alone one. Who would have thought that a fairy with equally unfathomable combat prowess would suddenly appear in the middle of their plan? In the end, the battle devolved into one where the 3 paramount heavenly gods were being tortured. This was not the battle that they wanted to fight. Just as the 3 paramount heavenly gods were suffering unspeakably, Air also couldn't take it anymore. There's something in my head. Life, hurry! Help me get rid of it! Translucent beads began to proliferate in a frenzy from the gaping hole in Air's head. The heavenly life god remained expressionless. There's no saving it. Cut it off. Air? Enlin was amused. Are you following Xing Tian's footsteps again? You have a bright future ahead of you. This is the path of your senior, Air. Don't worry, you can go now. Air didn't quite understand what Enlin was saying, but he couldn't help but feel like it was quite terrifying. No. How can a few strange beads make me yield? I refuse. Air roared with rage. Instead of retreating, he charged forward and launched a counterattack. F***ck. What the F***ck? The heavenly sea god was in despair. He was then greeted by the sight of his former brother quickly closing in on him with a sinister smile on his face. A merciless fist smashed into his face, boom! The heavenly sea god felt like his head had been smashed open. Air didn't care about the wretched state his shoulder was in. He unleashed a 7-sage sea fist toward Enlin's face. Waves of different colors instantly intertwined and engulfed heaven and earth, violently blasting Enlin's body away. Air didn't even get a chance to catch his breath when a bead suddenly floated out from the gaping hole in his head. A petite and graceful figure appeared beside him. Tina's sword was as fast as lightning, and it instantly pierced toward Air's chest. Evade! The heavenly life goddess screamed. Air shuddered and tried to evade. However, the fairy's sword was fast and vicious, and he had no chance to evade. The transparent blade tore through his defenses and pierced into his heart. That exquisite face was punctured again amid a blood-curdling wail. Chapter 2275. The heavenly life goddess' blood-curdling cries erupted into the heavens. Air also hurriedly retreated and unleashed a series of spatial enchantments to stop Tina's pursuit. Ah! Idiot, you really are an idiot! The heavenly life goddess was on the verge of tears from rage. I told you to sever your head, but you wouldn't. Now look what happened. You've been attacked again. Even your heart has been pierced. Air had clearly realized the severity of the situation. Tina's instantaneous movement technique didn't even cause any spatial fluctuations, so Air's heavenly god power was completely unable to suppress her movement. Furthermore, the divine mirror particles could absorb flesh and blood essence and proliferate without limit, so this was definitely an invisible bomb to Air. How about we sever it? Air hesitated momentarily. The heavenly life goddess. You didn't sever your head when you were severed? You're thinking about doing it now that your heart has been pierced? The heavenly life goddess suddenly felt exhausted. Did she have a vendetta against the three-phase true heavenly reincarnation formation? Did she have a vendetta against me? The heavenly life goddess was suddenly in a daze. At this point, Air had already decided to chop off his own neck and throw his head a few hundred miles away. Then, he used the power of space to blow up his own head. Lin and Tina both stopped their attacks upon seeing this. This scene was far too familiar. Was Air going to dig out his heart with a black tiger, and the three paramount heavenly gods would choose to self-detonate in a fit of rage? Damn it, as expected of two brothers, the path they took was exactly the same. If Air really did choose to self-detonate, then Lin and Tina wouldn't have to participate. At the end of the day, they were still a little sympathetic toward the three paramount heavenly gods. What kind of weirdo did they summon? Right at this moment, Air had already materialized a spatial blade and was approaching the heavenly life goddess's face. The heavenly life goddess's face was deathly pale. Self-detonate. Air's body faltered. Self-detonate? What self-detonate? The three paramount heavenly gods didn't want to speak. All they wanted was to delete their accounts and start over. However, at this moment, Air's voice suddenly became gentle as he said softly, "Life, bear with the terror. I'll dig out all those annoying particles. I've already used the power of the heavenly god to lock onto the position of every single particle. The process is going to be a little painful, so please bear with it." The heavenly life goddess was unable to continue what she was about to do. She stared at Air in shock. She stared at his headless neck, then at the countless resilient boundary lines that appeared on Air's hand. She finally knew that Air was telling the truth. Air really did not want to castrate her. Instead, he wanted to cure her illness. The life goddess' eyes turned red at this moment. It was as if she had finally met a true lover after meeting countless scumbags. That kind of excitement and emotion could no longer be expressed in word. "I'm not going to self-destruct," she said softly. Air slowly pushed the boundary line deep into the wound in his heart. Countless lines tried to separate the particles from his body, but these particles were already completely connected to the surrounding flesh, blood, meridians, and bones. There was no way to remove them. Even removing them from the middle was difficult as these particles had already become one with his flesh and blood. If he tried to remove them, his entire body would collapse. Air suddenly went berserk, and all of the thin lines coiled around the particles before pulling them out with all his might. The heavenly life goddess expression shifted drastically. "Stop, Bam!" The blood mist exploded along with the energy. All of the divine mirror particles were pulled out by the boundary line before being flung away. At the same time, Lin and Tina could see that a hole had already appeared where Air's heart should have been. As for the life goddess face, it had already been blown to smithereens. Lin was ecstatic. He had turned the tables. Air had turned the tables on her. He had thought that Air would suffer the same fate as but who would have thought that Air would be able to kill the life goddess instead? The heavenly sea god and the heavenly heaven god were both dumbstruck. "Impudent! Air, do you know what you're doing? You be ****. How dare you betray your master?" The heavenly sea god and the heavenly heaven god were both enraged. "Shut up. If you keep spouting nonsense, I'm going to kill both of you as well." Air did not reprimand the two paragons. Instead, he threatened them. The two paragons faltered upon hearing this. They clearly didn't think that this so-called perfect heavenly being would say something like this to them. Air stood silently on the spot and breathed calmly. It was as if he had obtained some kind of release, and he even extended his arms slightly toward the sky. My existence does not belong to any of you, so don't point fingers at me. My existence belongs to the entire world and the entire future. It has nothing to do with you. D'Air's voice was filled with pride and boldness. Boundless life force energy was healing his brain and heart. However, due to the life goddess, the rate of recovery was a little slow this time. Enlil saluted him with his gaze. He was a man of character. At this moment, a green light started to appear and materialized into a beautiful long-legged heavenly goddess in front of D'Air. It was the heavenly life goddess. The heavenly life goddess' divine halo seemed to have dimmed a little, but her aura was still extremely terrifying. Her long black hair fluttered in the wind, and her beautiful orange eyes stared at D'Air as if they were about to bleed. D'Air was also very shocked. Huh? You're not dead? The life goddess was completely enraged by this. Die, she roared in rage. Formation veined patterns appeared under her feet and connected to Tianhai's head. D'Air's reaction was also very quick. Without any hesitation, he punched his own shoulders with his extremely powerful power of the heavens. However, just as his fist landed, his body began to swell. Terrifying energy surged within his body, and his snow-white skin turned red and hot. Every part of his body expanded rapidly until he was like a balloon that had been inflated to its limit. Boom! At this moment, it was as if a supernova had exploded. Milky white destructive energy expanded rapidly and engulfed everything. The heavens shattered, space was pulverized, and the ocean was vaporized. Enlil and Tina were already prepared, and they immediately unleashed powerful defensive spell techniques to block the shockwaves from the self-detonation. Another sun shone over the white nectar sea. This shocked the entire Tai Chu continent. After the sun dissipated, the water level of the white nectar sea had already plummeted. The three paramount heavenly gods appeared in the distance with extremely exhausted expressions on their faces. They looked as if their bodies had been completely hollowed out. The heavenly life goddess beautiful, jet-black hair had become curly, and it was clear that D'Air had used his life force to help her perm her hair. The three supreme heavenly gods quickly concealed their exhaustion, and the formation veined patterns appeared under their feet as a sinister light erupted from the immeasurable flower again. Come out, D'Air. Chapter 2276. A dazzling light flashed past. A heavenly human tribe living being with a handsome face and 10 magnificent wings appeared in front of Enlil and Tina. He was born with a holy and noble aura. He looked at Tina and Enlil calmly. I am D-San. Are you my enemies? Tina immediately said, We are not your enemies. You are being controlled by the 3 heads on your body. Don't you want to castrate them? The 3 Supremes were so angry that their faces turned green and white. However, they did not say anything. D-San looked at the 3 Supremes and shook his head. Don't try to sow discord. Although I don't like them on my body, they are cooperating with me so quietly. Why should I go against them? Cut the crap. Die, my enemies. The eyes of the 3 Supremes turned red when they heard this. Indeed, not talking was the right way to use them. It was precisely because he was too talkative that the living beings summoned by the 3-phase true heavenly reincarnation formation were repulsed. However, after remaining silent in the face of everything that was happening, even the haughty and flawless heavenly human tribe beings' attitude changed. How rare the 3 Supremes felt like they had seen the moon. At this moment, the battle started. The arrogant D-San attacked first. He held the ocean heavenly spear in his left hand and the world-crushing spear in his right. His entire body was covered with a layer of heavenly power armor. He looked very powerful as he charged towards the 2 of them. With a swing of the ocean heavenly spear, a raging wave was generated. With a thrust of the world-crushing spear, it could break through the barrier of 10,000 worlds. In terms of combat ability, D-San was the strongest. Enlil used the new 5 elemental power to block his opponent's attack. Very quickly, he got used to D-San's attacking rhythm. D-San's ocean heavenly spear was used to repel and defend. The world-crushing spear was used to attack. This was the opposite of the two previous supremes. Ha ha! Very good. You are able to block my series of attacks. You are qualified to be my first opponent. D-San realized that Enlin's arms were surrounded by the 5 elemental power and blocked his attack. His arrogant expression changed to one of admiration. The tip of his world-shattering spear was suddenly enveloped by a layer of crimson power, and the absolute will of death and depravity instantly permeated heaven and earth. In an instant, a blood-red line pierced through the void with absolute death intent, piercing towards Enlin's head. Enlin slapped a palm horizontally in an attempt to deflect the realm-shattering spear. However, unlike last time, the 5 elemental essences enshrouding his arm were corroded by the wisp of crimson on the tip of the realm-shattering spear. The power of death of the supreme god of life? Enlin's face changed and he quickly retreated. At that moment, the world-breaker lance pierced through the void behind him, leaving a trail of blood on his face. Tina attacked D-San from behind. D-San swung the oceanic heavenly spear in his left hand backward. A massive and ferocious oceanic energy exploded and sent Little Pixie flying again. This was no ordinary seawater. Every droplet of water could penetrate immortal artifact-level materials. The ocean formed by these droplets could easily crush a small world. Tina did not dare to underestimate this level of attack. She had no choice but to put the Divine Mirror World sword in front of her and create a mirror to block all the impact of the seawater. D-San took this opportunity to attack Enlin like a torrential storm. The world-shattering lance turned into countless crimson shadows that pierced forward. Enlin quickly used his movement technique to evade. This attack was a combination of the paramount god of sky and life. It was too much for him to take it head-on with his new 5 elemental power. It was more worthwhile to evade. Evade, evade, evade. Do you only know how to evade? Come and hit me if you can. The admiration in D-San's eyes gradually faded as he looked at the dodging Enlin. Instead, it was replaced by sharpness and viciousness. He had just finished speaking when a fist came flying toward him. Good timing. D-San was not surprised. Instead, he was elated. The world-shattering lance pierced toward Enlin's head at an even faster speed. He actually ignored the fist in front of him. It was just a fist. The threat of the world-shattering lance was too much. He could see Enlin's head exploding in the next second. Chi! The world-shattering lance pierced toward Enlin's head. The crimson light resisted for a while before quickly dimming. Even the tip of the world-shattering lance seemed to meet with great resistance. It collided with some kind of power and was slowly corroded. This is... D-San's eyes widened in shock. He was greeted by the sight of a mystical disk appearing in front of Enlin's head. The powers of the 9 divine tools intertwined to create an unprecedentedly terrifying substance at the center of the disk. It was that ethereal energy that seemed both purple and gold that blocked its world-shattering spear. Before D-San could react, Enlin's fist had already occupied his entire field of vision. Boom! The terrifying power of the 5 elements exploded. The pure power collided and caused D-San's head to cave in. Fortunately, he had the boundless power of heaven to support his body. Otherwise, even a god of creation would be smashed to smithereens. D-San's body left a white line in the air. At this moment, Tina was already behind D-San. Her sword light flashed past. Although it was not very powerful, the translucent blade contained absolute power. It sliced D-San's body from his head all the way to his body, slicing his body in half. Instant kill. The two of them worked together to kill D-San in an instant. D-San's screams and the pained expressions on the faces of the 3 god of creation froze. This was Enlin's trump card. The 9-life vital plate could be said to be his strongest defensive and offensive method after abandoning the darkness. D-San clearly did not have the power to break through the purple-gold energy instantly. The sudden counterattack from his trump card was enough to determine the outcome of the battle. D-San relied on the power of the paramount god of life, so there was nothing to be afraid of even if his body was sliced in half. However, the terrifying thing was that after Tina's divine mirror world sword struck D-San, it would leave behind a large number of divine mirror particles. These particles had already covered the two halves of D-San's body, so how was he going to recover? Tina's divine mirror world sword could be said to be the bane of the goddess of life's power. Tina raised her sword again to deal the finishing blow. The despairing goddess of life trembled as she said, "Self-destruct. Wait, I think I can still," D-San hurriedly said with a horrified expression. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion erupted. Tina and Enlin were blasted flying by the explosion again. Holy F***ck, are they addicted to self-destructing? Exploding at the slightest provocation. Enlin was astonished. Getting used to it is a scary thing. Tina swallowed a divine pill and stood upright with her sword in hand as she spoke in a cold voice. This type of self-destruction and account deletion does not come without a price. The conditions of the three paramount beings are only getting worse and worse. Enlin's eyes narrowed as he spoke in a cold voice. I still have a surprise prepared for them. A devilish smile appeared on Tina's face. Chapter 2277. After the energy of the explosion subsided, a handsome heavenly human tribe being appeared before Enlin again. My name is DC. Are you my enemies? He glanced at Enlin and Tina with his clear and pure eyes, and the smile on his face didn't diminish in the slightest. Heavenly darkness goddess and strange god of creation, you two are going to be my first opponents after I was born. Very good, very good. Enlin nodded in agreement. I think it's very good too. D.E.D.R. and D-San who died before you also said the same thing. D.C. faltered upon hearing this. There were 3 others before me? They all died? How did they die? The heavenly sea god became extremely anxious upon seeing this, and he urged, D.C., don't listen to the nonsense of your enemies. You can't trust the words of your enemies. They are all demonic bewitchment demons and enemies of the heavenly Tao. All you have to do is kill them. Enlin replied calmly, they all self-destructed. Self-destructed? DC was just about to activate his energy when he heard this. That's right. Because the 3 paramount beings were dissatisfied with what they did, the 3 paramount beings made them self-destruct. All 3 of your previous selves were the same. The 3 faces on your body can not only talk nonsense, but they can also decide whether you live or die. Enlin smiled and looked at DC with a sympathetic expression. Do you think you are the most perfect heavenly human? How can a heavenly human whose life and death are dictated by them think that you are the most perfect heavenly human? DC's body began to tremble as if he had been struck by lightning. He was a true heavenly being, the most perfect heavenly being, and he could see through all lies and falsehoods. As such, he could naturally sense that Enlin was not lying when he said those words. In that case, Tina splayed her hands open, and her soft lips parted to reveal the cruelest suggestion she could muster. They're going to destroy you sooner or later, so I suggest you castrate them. The 3 paramount beings, the sky, sea, and life were about to go mad with rage. How could such a harmless-looking fairy be so despicable? Enlin continued to add insult to injury. DC, you seem to have 3 powerful helpers, but in reality, you are fighting 1 against 5. We haven't killed the perfect celestial yet, but they helped me make the celestial self-destruct first. The life goddess gritted her teeth. DC, don't listen to their nonsense. We will always stand on the same side as you. As long as you don't betray us, we won't hurt you. As soon as he finished speaking, Hina took out a mirror. The image started to play. It was a 3D super clear recording of D-San's body being sliced into 2. D-San didn't want to die, but he was mercilessly ordered by the three supremes to self-destruct, the three utmost beings sucked in a breath of cold air. Emperor C. Unlin's jaw dropped. Holy F***ck, they even prepared a recording. Little Na's maneuvering was going to get full marks. D. San's unfinished sentence of "wait, I can still do it," and the goddess of life's emotionless self-destruct were so ironic and chilling. DC was stunned. What had his brothers gone through? Tina's maneuvering was like a merciless hammer. The three utmost beings, especially the life goddess who had said those words earlier on, were as embarrassed as they could get right now. Unlin and Tina looked as if they were watching a good show unfold. So, what will you choose? The perfect celestial DC. Will you choose to kill the three paramount heavenly gods with us, or will you choose to be a coward whose life and death are in their hands? Tina asked with a smile. Her words were very harsh. The heavenly heaven god was already regretting his decision. What kind of F***king spell formation was this? Why did it have to cause so much trouble just to unleash it? The heavenly sea god was also very tired, and he chose to remain silent with a resigned expression. The life goddess was already on the verge of saying self-destruct. That won't happen, a voice suddenly sounded. The three paramount heavenly gods all faltered upon hearing this. However, DC raised his head and looked at Unlin and Tina with a resolute expression. I won't leave them. Even if they can decide whether I live or die, I know what the most important thing to do now is. The Celestial gripped his hands together, and two massive hammers suddenly appeared in his hands. One hammer was as blue as the ocean, while the other hammer was as red as blood. Getting rid of you, getting rid of the enemies of the heavenly Tao, this is the first thing I need to do. Boom! A terrifying and powerful aura soared into the heavens. A heavenly human tribe mighty figure enshrouded in boundless heavenly light seemed to have undergone some kind of spiritual transformation. His eyes became purer and more translucent, and his 10 wings also expanded in size. Crap, we seem to have forced his mental state to mature? And Lin's lips twitched. Air. Tina withdrew her mirror awkwardly. It's all right, it's not a big deal. DC looked at Unlin and Tina with raging battle intent. The three paramount heavenly gods were almost moved to tears. How thoughtful! This child is so thoughtful. The goddess of life immediately gave DC all the information she needed to fight against Unlin and Tina. This was information that the three celestials had exchanged their lives for. She had already decided that she was going to play with this account to the end. DC swung his hammers and charged toward Unlin. His 10 wings formed a streamlined airspace which greatly increased his speed. The paramount power of the heavens became his personal acceleration ability, and he hurtled toward Unlin with terrifying power, immediately following which he unleashed a series of devastating hammer strikes. Every time they collided, Unlin felt as if his opponent was using a gigantic planet to smash him mercilessly. The impact was not something that the previous attacks could compare to. Time and time again, the collisions shook the heavens and the earth. Fist against hammer, hammer against fist. The energy from the collisions was like the great destruction of a planet, and everything within a radius of 10,000 kilometers was torn to shreds. And Lin could sense that even though his opponent's weapon was a little ugly, it was more powerful than the three perfect celestials. Perhaps it was because his opponent's mental state had improved, but all of his attacks were extremely compatible with the heavenly Tao. They were pure, without any distractions, and were impeccable. DC was even more troublesome now, of course, and Lin was not to be trifled with. His opponent was indeed powerful, but Unlin's fists were also very powerful. He could often use his powerful and explosive fist techniques to force DC back. He could also use his trump card, the 9-life vital disc, to find an opportunity to strike back and pierce through DC's arms. Tina's movement technique was very agile, and she slashed DC's leg with her sword. DC was very decisive, and he immediately dismembered that leg. The regenerative ability of the heavenly god of life allowed him to regrow a new leg in less than a second. DC was still being suppressed in this battle. However, DC relied on his bottomless reserves of energy and insane regenerative ability to withstand wave after wave of attacks from Enlin and Tina. "It's over," the heavenly sea god said proudly. DC did very well. His performance was perfect, and he completely fulfilled my expectations. The life goddess also gave him high praise. The three paramount heavenly gods all heaved a sigh of relief. However, at this moment, a fairy's voice suddenly sounded. "It's over. Hee, the show is about to begin." Chapter 2278. The battle between Enlin, Tina, and the three paramount gods attracted the attention of the entire Tai Chu continent. The heaven-crushing formation had astonished the entire world, and the heaven-crushing sex actions had drawn the attention of the entire world. However, the most powerful battle in the world was still taking place in the White Nectar Sea. This was the final struggle of the paramount heavenly gods and the final battle of the heavenly human tribe united army. All of the powerful beings on the Tai Chu continent, including the gods of creation who weren't participating in the battle, had their eyes fixed on these two locations. These were the two locations that could decide their fate. The Pavilion Lord of the 4-9 Immortal Sex Spirit Pavilion, Tina, had displayed her true power to the world. It could be said that she was the first god of creation of the 4-9 Immortal Sect. When she truly unleashed her power, all of the living beings in this world were in awe. The divine mirror essential power was extremely powerful, and there would occasionally be a mysterious divine mirror hanging upside down in the sky, exuding the divine might of God of creation. Before this battle had even concluded, news of this had already spread throughout the entire Tai Chu continent. All of the living beings let loose cries of surprise. The 4-9 Immortal Sect really did have some trump cards up their sleeve. To think that they even had a legendary god of creation. Just what kind of sect was this? The heaven-crushing united army was the most excited. Their morale was boosted after learning that they had a god of creation among their ranks. They were no longer curious as to why this fairy was a god of creation. After all, the 4-9 Immortal Sect had already created many miracles. With a god of creation, all they had to do was shout about how bad *SS they were. To them, the earth-shattering explosions in the distance were like war drums, the bugle call, and the dawn of all living beings. They had thought that the 4-9 Immortal Sect having a god of creation was already astonishing enough. However, what was even more astonishing was yet to come. "Your Majesty, do you think sect leader Enlin will be able to win this battle?" Little Hong Ling stood on the grassy border of the White Nectar Sea and held on to Nuwa's hand as she looked on at the battle in the distance. "It's hard to say. His power has been severely restricted." Nuwa shook her head, but a hint of hope appeared in her eyes as she looked on at the battle in the distance. "However, if he can win, then he will bring even greater hope to this world. That little elf will be able to help him, right?" Little Hong Ling clenched his fists and said. A hint of confusion appeared on Nuwa's face at the mention of Tina. "My origin energy is nature, so my perception of laws and karma is the clearest. I can see certain information that you can't. And from that little fairy, I can sense a sense of contradiction everywhere," Nuwa murmured. Little Hong Ling was stunned and asked curiously, "What do you mean?" Nuwa didn't answer Little Hong Ling's question, but she looked at the battle in the distance with anticipation. "That elf will definitely be the key to changing the situation." Sigh. What a pitiful little girl. At this time, a sage-like old man suddenly appeared beside Nuwa and shook his head. "Senior Lord of Tao and Virtue, who's the one making my heart ache?" Hong Ling tilted her head and asked. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue didn't reply. Instead, he continued to stare at the battle in the distance with an increasingly entranced expression. Little Hong Ling had a blank look on his face. He felt that he was becoming more and more like a retard as he stood together with these big shot. The experience was extremely bad. In the mountain range to the northeast of the White Nectar Sea. Ding Xiaoru, are you going to save them or not? Are you going to save them or not? A young girl with glassy eyes tugged at the sleeve of a man in black as she urged him. Hurry up and save them. They're already at this stage, why aren't you doing anything? Don't forget, it was Enlin who allowed you to return to the God of Creation stage. The man was a little tired from being tugged at, and he could only offer an explanation. Ini. It's not that I don't want to fight, it's just that the time isn't right. Just because that little elf didn't suffer from the backlash of the heavenly Tao doesn't mean that we won't suffer from the backlash of the heavenly Tao. I only have one chance to fight. The young girl raised her exquisite face. When do you plan to fight? If the heaven-crushing sect succeeds, then I won't have to fight. If the heaven-crushing sect fails, then I'll have to fight. The paramount god of the ghost tribe was also quite depressed at this moment. He had initially wanted to focus on his own safety, but the winds were slowly changing. The heaven-crushing sect's chances of winning had increased, and Enlin had become capable of creating countless miracles. As such, his cowardly heart was starting to get restless. If it was a battle of certain death, then he wouldn't participate. But what about a battle where he could see victory? He was Patriarch Zhu Yin, the paramount god of the ghost tribe. There was clearly a chance for victory, but he was running away. What kind of paramount god was he? Hence, Patriarch Zhu Yin had come to spectate the battle. Who would have thought that the little fairy who stole the underworld Tao flower from the opposite shore realm would become such a powerful god of creation in such a short time? Is she more powerful than you? Li Yin asked. From the combat prowess she's displayed so far, she's slightly more powerful than me, Patriarch Zhu Yin replied. You're so weak. Li Yin patted the man's head with a sympathetic expression. Patriarch Zhu Yin's eyes widened. Don't spout nonsense. I'm not the most powerful god of creation on the Tai Chu continent, but I'm definitely not the weakest. But Big Sister Tina has only been at the god of creation stage for a short time, but she's already more powerful than you, Li Yin said. There are no weaklings among gods of creation. All of them possess limitless potential and possibilities. Patriarch Zhu Yin spoke with a serious expression. But Big Sister Tina has only been at the God of Creation stage for a short time, but she's already more powerful than you, Li Yin said. Tina must have encountered an unimaginable opportunity, which is why she's more powerful than me, but that doesn't mean I'm weak. Patriarch Zhu Yin struggled. But Big Sister Tina has only been at the God of Creation stage for a short time, but she's already more powerful than you, Li Yin said. Patriarch Zhu Yin, sorry, I'm a weakling. Thus, the short debate concluded with Patriarch Zhu Yin's defeat. The two of them turned their attention back to the battlefield. A thought suddenly occurred to Li Yin. Xiaoru, if all of the gods of creation on the Tai Chu continent were to help Enlin, would this battle be resolved in an instant? Ding Xiaoru shook his head with a smile upon hearing this. Don't think about things that don't exist. Which god of creation doesn't care about their own lives? In this current situation, if 2 or 3 gods of creation can appear to help Enlin, that would already be an incredible feat. I can't ask for anything more. However, Li Yin suddenly slapped Ding Xiaoru's shoulder with a frenzied expression. Look, the sky over there has completely turned into a dark red color. Patriarch Zhu Yin's pupils contracted drastically as he looked in the direction that Li Yin was pointing. A terrifying power suddenly erupted into the sky from the location where Enlin was battling. A new aura of God of Creation began to spread through the heavens. Chapter 2279. DC was extremely powerful. Moreover, he was truly able to focus completely. His state of mind was clear. This, in a way, increased his fighting power to a certain extent. In addition, he had complete information on his enemy's abilities, as well as insane energy reserves and regenerative abilities. In the face of Enlin and Tina's combined attacks, He was able to hold on for a long time. The heavenly ocean hammer smashed toward Enlin, but it was repelled by Enlin's fist. At this moment, Tina took advantage of this opportunity to launch a sneak attack. The barrier between the two worlds instantly appeared around DC's body, and Little Fairy's divine mirror essential power suddenly surged to its peak. The world sword transformed into the sharpest ray of light, which tore through the barrier and left a gash on DC's arm. In the next moment, the wings on DC's back were like the sharpest blades that sliced off his entire arm without hesitation. He didn't forget to reward Tina with a hammer after he was done. Pure, powerful, and decisive. Even though DC was at a huge disadvantage, he could still rely on his unique characteristics to fight a battle of attrition with Enlin and Tina. So what if you have the advantage of numbers? DC is invincible. Victory will be ours. The heavenly sea god was extremely smug. After all, DC was being tortured by Enlin and Tina, and they shared the same pain. However, DC had persevered for so long, and he was elated. This was because he could see victory in the future. The advantage of numbers? Do you really know what it means to bully someone with numbers? A cold light suddenly flashed across Tina's face. DC regained his arm, and he swung his hammers toward the fairy again. Aren't you guys bullying us with numbers now? Come and fight us one-on-one if you dare. The heavenly sea god yelled. No, I don't want to fight you one-on-one. Tina shook her head. I just want to show you what it means to bully someone with numbers. What do you mean? The heavenly sea god was taken aback. At this moment, DC's life-withering hammer flew toward Tina again. However, Tina flapped her golden wings, and she instantly retreated several hundred meters to evade this attack. As she retreated, she reached out and pulled at the void. A mirror-like spatial gate was pulled out just like that. DC instinctively felt that something was wrong. He grabbed at the space door. Absolute domain seal. Suddenly, layers of absolute barriers appeared at the location of the spatial gate between the two realms. When Tina opened the door, DC closed the door again and locked it. Hee, I only set up this door to locate a coordinate. Tina did not panic when she saw DC's actions. Instead, she smiled. What did you say? Emperor C was slightly stunned. That's because my helper can open a passageway between the two realms on his own, Tina replied with a smile. Suddenly, DC felt a chill run down his spine. A dark red spatial door suddenly appeared beside him. A man with red eyes and a demonic horn on his head suddenly leaped out of the dark red spatial door. His fist exploded with a dazzling red light as he punched at DC's face. This is Source Force? You are a god of creation? DC's expression changed, and he immediately used his hammer to protect himself. However, when that terrifying force surged out, his body was still knocked back a dozen meters. You. Who are you? DC's expression became solemn as he looked at the god of creation of the true demon tribe, who had never appeared in the intelligence reports. Is this the heavenly human tribe? Interesting. Very interesting. The man from the true demon tribe grinned as he took out a huge crimson golden saber. Divine Mirror World, I am the paramount god of the true demon tribe, flowing gold. Flowing gold, DC murmured. The expressions of the three paramount gods changed again. What's going on? Why is there another god of creation? A god of creation that does not exist in the intelligence reports. Moreover, he did not receive any backlash from the heavenly Tao when he attacked us. Damn it, why are there so many strange enemies? Just as the three paramount gods were feeling frustrated, a dark red demonic energy had already shot into the sky and covered the entire sky. The color of heaven and earth changed because of it. Flowing Gold's essential power of creation was on full display at this moment. His paramount god of creation aura spread throughout the entire White Jade Sea realm, and even all of the gods of creation on the Tai Chu continent turned to look at him in awe. My god, another god of creation has appeared. The heaven-crushing sect-united army let loose cries of surprise. I just received a message in my mind. The paramount god of the true demon tribe of the divine mirror world, flowing gold? The divine mirror world. Could it be the world of Tina from the 4-9 Immortal sect? I remember that she has a divine mirror mobile team. So that's how it is. Wait. A god of creation has appeared in the divine mirror world? Gasp. This is way too insane. How is this possible? The heaven-crushing sect-united army fell into deep shock. Even Patriarch Zhu Yin was unable to sit still. His eyes widened with incredulity. Impossible. A god of creation's world can only give birth to Tao integration stage super mighty figures at most. How could a god of creation appear in her world? What's going on? What the hell is going on? However, to everyone's surprise, this was only the beginning of their shock. DC had only just stabilized his body when a dark green circle suddenly appeared behind him. A strange-looking boy with 3 heads suddenly jumped out of the circle and hugged DC's body. He, ha ha ha. 3 different types of laughter erupted. DC felt as if his consciousness was being torn apart, as if something was tearing at it. His expression shifted drastically, and he hurriedly swung his hammer behind him. At this moment, the 3-headed boy disappeared on the spot like a phantom. The dark green essential power of creation soared into the heavens at this moment, announcing to the world. The divine mirror world, the paramount god of the void spirit tribe, the 3 living beings, had arrived. DC had only just swung his hammer when a black hole appeared above him. A peerlessly graceful figure began to appear. She had a pair of snowy eyes, a pair of wings spread open, and a black dress fluttered in the wind. Her fair and translucent feet tapped lightly onto the huge hammer. This. DC's pupils contracted slightly. A spear exuding an extremely terrifying aura expanded in his eyes. Pure white Genesis energy enshrouded the body of the spear, and the tip of the spear was as sharp as a silver star. However, in the blink of an eye, it lit up the entire world. The blinding light caused DC to temporarily lose his senses. Divine technique. Spear pinnacle. A cold and piercingly cold voice reverberated throughout heaven and earth. The silvery white spear tore through the air for 1,500 kilometers, and pure white blood splattered through the air. Chapter 2280. The silvery white spear projection pierced through the air for over 1,500 kilometers, stunning countless powerful beings on the Tai-Chu continent. It could be said that not only in the White Nectar Sea, but most living beings on the central region of the Tai-Chu continent were also able to see that dazzling and powerful spear projection. Pure white origin energy surged in the air, and the paramount god of creation might surged. All of the living beings present knew the identity of the god of creation. She was also a god of creation of the divine mirror world, the paramount god of the dark wing tribe, Black Stone. The spear projection continued onward, and DC's body was revealed. There was a bloody scar on his face. At the critical moment, his reaction was still very fast, and he dodged the fatal attack of the gun. However, he didn't even get a chance to catch his breath before another bubble appeared behind him. A pure and flawless mermaid with translucent skin suddenly emerged from the bubble. Immediately afterward, her pink fishtail slapped toward DC's head like a merciless slap. DC turned around and unleashed a heavenly ocean hammer. Boom! The fishtail collided with the hammer, and seawater exploded into the air. The mermaid seemed to have a powerful resistance against seawater. This time, she was able to break through DC's heavenly ocean hammer and strike DC's body with immense power. DC could feel a terrifying power crashing into his body, causing the injuries that Lin and Tina had inflicted on him to recuperate. He threw up a mouthful of blood, and his body hurtled back in retreat. Faint pink essential power converged to form an ocean that spread across the entire sky. The divine might of a god of creation began to spread. the paramount god of the spirit fish clan of the divine mirror world Tian-E. This information spread throughout heaven and earth along with the divine might. Just as DC was retreating, a round rock fell from the sky. DC immediately used his agile movement techniques to evade. However, the falling rock suddenly expanded to several million feet in size. DC didn't even have a chance to curse as he looked at the falling rock. His body was crushed by the rock and sent crashing into the ocean, creating massive waves tens of thousands of feet tall. A burst of earthy essential power that was as vast as the earth appeared in the sky. It was silent yet mighty, and it announced to the world that another god of creation had appeared. The paramount god of the stone tribe of the divine mirror world, MOU, had appeared. One god of creation after another arrived. The heaven-crushing Alliance army, as well as the powerful beings who were secretly observing the battle at the White Nectar Sea, were all stunned to the point of numbness. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. The gods of creation, who only existed in legends, had all appeared in large numbers. How could all living beings remain calm after seeing this? What was even more terrifying was that they all came from the same place, the divine mirror world. Any powerful being who had some inside information would know that this was the place where Tina was the ruler of the realm pavilion. On top of that, the 4-9 Immortal sect had the divine mirror enforcement team. These gods of creation were definitely from the 4-9 Immortal sect. The heaven-crushing United Army, who had just been stunned by the 4-9 Immortal sect's vast resources, were once again astonished by what they were seeing. Patriarch Zhu Yin's eyes widened as he stared intently at the scenes unfolding before his eyes, and he was at a complete loss for words. 6 types of extremely terrifying and powerful origin powers occupied the entire sky. It was like a battle between the gods. Just the divine might alone was enough to shake the world. He knew about Tina's divine mirror world, but it was exactly because of this that he found it even more difficult to accept. This divine mirror world had given birth to 5 gods of creation? Why didn't she ascend to the heavens? Xiaoru, only now do I realize that you weren't being modest when you said you were weak. Liyin murmured to herself as she stared blankly at the essential powers of creation in the heavens. Ding Xiaoru. At this moment, the arrival of the 5 gods of creation had drawn a temporary halt to the battle between the heaven-crushing United Army and the heavenly human tribe United Army. Please tell me this isn't a dream. We have 5 gods of creation as allies? My God. The divine mirror world is bad *SS. The 4-9 Immortal sect is bad *SS. All of the heaven-crushing sect powerful beings had tears streaming down their faces as they stared at the gods of creation with a fanatical expression. The most excited ones were the living beings of the same tribe as the gods of creation. The Dark Wing Emperor stared at the beautiful woman in a black dress with an entranced expression. Who would have thought that our Dark Wing tribe would have gods of creation as well, and they're in the divine mirror world? How beautiful! The Dark Wing Emperor was suddenly struck by a sense of longing. The Daynite monarch was a little distressed. Sigh, the divine mirror world has a god of creation of the Dark Wing tribe, but our Dark Knight mobile castle doesn't. This is clearly the Dark Wing tribe's ancestral land, right? Could it be that this Dark Wing tribe ancestral land is fake? She had only just said this when the Dark Wing Emperor viciously smacked her on the head. You have the nerve to say that? Would this have happened to you if you had been a little more hard-working? F***ck, all of you are as cowardly as ghosts. You're all choosing not to make breakthroughs because you're afraid of dying during your tribulation transcendence? Even you only broke through to the Tao integration stage because you couldn't hold back your cultivation base any longer. What use do I have for you? The Dark Wing Emperor wailed with anguish. At this moment, the Daynite monarch suddenly spoke. The paramount god of our Dark Wing tribe has appeared. Does that mean we can join the god of creation, Blackstone? As soon as he said that, the other true kings came to their senses and echoed loudly. That's right. We can join the god of creation. Blackstone is a friend or underling of the heavenly leader anyway, and we're all from the Darkwing tribe, so we can definitely join the god of creation. This is great. We've gained another powerful backer. Long live Big Sister Blackstone. All of the monarchs were already getting high. The Darkwing Emperor. I scolded you for being useless, but not only did you not reflect on your actions, you even want to change your leader now? The Darkwing Emperor suddenly felt a little isolated. Just what kind of team was he leading? Setting aside the Darkwing tribe, even the True Demon tribe and Spirit Fish clan were getting high. This is great. We've gained another paramount god of the True Demon tribe. Master Flowing Gold is so cool. Demon Emperor, see, you couldn't help but guzzle a few mouthfuls of wine before chortling with glee. This is great. This is so great. We've gained another role model. Let's all celebrate. Demon Lord Ling Gu's eyes lit up. He had been struggling to find someone to guide him since he was stuck at the god of creation. Now, wasn't the flowing gold creation god the perfect teacher? The True Demon tribe were ecstatic, but the Spirit Fish clan were even more ecstatic. There had never been a god of creation in their tribe, but Tiani had become a god of creation. All of them turned to look at the extremely beautiful mermaid with scorching envy in their eyes. So beautiful, so beautiful. Tiani's beauty is truly dazzling. She's definitely the most beautiful being in the Spirit Fish clan. Shut up. Have you forgotten about Alliance Leader Lon? She's the most beautiful. At this moment, a rock golem in the northern region of the Tai Chu continent slowly opened its eyes. A god of creation of our tribe has appeared? MOU from the Divine Mirror World. That's great. He's definitely a profound philosopher. I have to go and discuss my century conundrum with him. Chapter 2281. There was actually still a portion of the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army stationed on the continent surrounding the White Nectar Sea. They had once chosen to submit to the Heavenly Human Tribe and viewed the human race and the heaven-crushing sect as their enemies. There were a total of 20 million powerful beings stationed there, including powerful beings from the Creation Realm, the Dark Marshlands, the Western Dragon Forest, and the Void Spirit Realm. 5 gods of creation. 5 more gods of creation. That's more gods of creation than I've ever seen in my life. What kind of sect is the 4-9 Immortal sect? Why are there so many powerful beings popping up every few days? And their numbers are getting more and more ridiculous. This king shudders in fear. Soul Light Martial Emperor, the 3 living beings are the gods of creation of our Void Spirit tribe. If they came to our Void Spirit realm, they would be able to dominate everything. Sigh. Were we really wrong? All of the powerful beings of the Tai Chu continent were feeling remorseful. The higher-ups of the Heavenly Human tribe had urgently summoned them to assist in this sudden battle. However, a portion of them had gone, while a portion of them hadn't. Why? The reason was already very clear. They couldn't guarantee that they would definitely win this battle. That's right, if they still chose to fight for the Heavenly Human tribe, it was very likely that they would be committing suicide by participating in this battle. Hence, a portion of the living beings didn't participate in this battle. Instead, they chose to silently observe the battle from afar. At this moment, they finally witnessed this earth-shattering scene. While they were glad that they hadn't gone, their emotions also became even more complex. The 4-9 Immortal sect's radiance on the Tai Chu continent was already something that no other power could overshadow. Not even powers with gods of creation among their ranks could do so. It was simply too dazzling. At the same time, it was also a bit more mysterious. No one knew how many trump cards Lin had up his sleeve. How many trump cards did the 4-9 Immortal sect have up their sleeves, Your Majesty? Lin has so many more helpers. Is he going to win? Little Hong Ling asked excitedly as she looked at the overwhelming essential power in the sky. Nuwa's expression also gradually changed from one of indifference to one of astonishment. She had never seen anything like this before. It wasn't that she hadn't seen a god of creation before, but she had never seen a world with a god of creation that could give birth to another god of creation. Heavenly Venerate, could it be that Tina is already a being above the god of creation stage? Nuwa was astonished. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue shook his head. No, she's at the peak of the god of creation stage. She hasn't taken that step. Then her divine mirror world. Nuwa was still extremely astonished and perplexed. Have you ever seen a world that can give birth to a god of creation? You have to realize that her world is even more developed than the Tai Chu continent in terms of the Spirit Fish clan and the Dark Wing tribe. I'm sure you know what that entails. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue stroked his beard as a reminiscent expression appeared on his face. A world that can give birth to a god of creation. There are indeed existences that can do what she did. However, such existences have already transcended beyond the universe and reached a realm that is unimaginable to us. This elf Tina is very powerful. I can't see through her, but I know that she's missing something. If we can find it, she might be able to accomplish something that we can't even imagine. Sigh. The Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue heaved another forlorn sigh as he spoke. Little Hong Ling's eyes lit up as she listened. She knew one thing, and that was that Tina was very powerful. Lin's chances of victory had increased slightly, and that was all that mattered. A gargantuan rock golem suddenly appeared at the edge of the white nectar sea. There were countless mountains and rivers on its chest, as if it contained an entire world within. Mr. MOU, Mr. MOU. I'm a world-enlightened being. I'm very happy that you're here. Can we have a chat? The rock golem waved its hands toward the gargantuan rock at the bottom of the sea. However, the gargantuan rock that was crushing DC didn't say anything. Mr. MOU, why do you think some people like to eat savory tofu pudding, while others like to eat sweet tofu pudding? What's the root cause of this? The world-enlightened being asked. The gargantuan, round rock remained silent and didn't say anything. Are you busy with your battle so you can't answer my question? The world-enlightened being asked. MOU still didn't say anything. Everything seemed to be passing by in silence. The world-enlightened being felt like there was a reason for this silence. His eyes suddenly lit up, and the aged rock seemed to have been cleansed of all the dust and life in it. A god of creation had to respond no matter what they said, but MOU chose to remain silent. Why was he doing this? What was the deeper meaning behind his actions? In that instant, the world-enlightened being was able to see the eternal silence, the myriad phenomena of the world, and the tolerance of all living beings. Whether you moved or not, the savory tofu pudding and the sweet tofu pudding were right here. Sometimes, emptiness was the best answer. I've attained enlightenment. The world-enlightened being bowed toward the rock at the bottom of the sea before departing. From beginning to end, the gargantuan rock at the bottom of the sea didn't respond at all. At the center of the battle, where everyone was watching, 5 extremely proud and dazzling gods of creation bowed respectfully toward the little fairy. The woman with the black feathers waved her sleeves and bowed, the mermaid with a vibrant divine light curled up her tail, the man with monstrous demonic chi patted his own chest, the 3-headed living being's eyes were tightly shut, and a divine light suddenly flashed through the eyes of the gargantuan rock black stone. Tiani! Flowing gold. 3 living beings. Boom. We pay our respects to our goddess. We pay our respects to our divine spokesperson. The gods of creation's respect came from the bottom of their hearts. These were 5 beings who stood at the pinnacle of the Tai Chu continent in the infinite realm of stars, and their salutes were deeply engraved into the minds of all living beings. What kind of mighty being could make even legendary beings bow their heads in such a sincere manner? They knew that this image would be immortalized in this world for all eternity. There's no need for such formalities. Tina continued to speak with a bright smile on her face. Now, let's bully the weak with numbers. Yes. As you wish, goddess. Gang up on them. Gang up on them. All of the gods of creation were extremely excited. At this moment, an unimaginably vast power of the heavens suddenly erupted into the sky. Boom! A pillar of pure white light blasted the gargantuan rock at the bottom of the sea into the air. DC let loose an enraged roar, and the power of the entire white nectar sea surged relentlessly toward the gargantuan rock, which was the size of a planet, and it was blasted into the sky. Countless cracks began to appear on the base of the gargantuan rock, and the earthy Genesis energy in the sky also began to crack. It had clearly received a substantial blow. You think a mere eternal stone from a great realm can crush me? Dream on. DC's body rose into the sky. Even though he was in a sorry state, his battle intent was extremely high. He had only just risen into the sky when he saw many pairs of eyes staring at him with malicious intent.